Thanks for that, Robbie. Apologies for the delay. As you can see, I was fighting on my tablet here. I won in the end. Um, I'd like to welcome members, officers, members of the public to this meeting of the Planning Control Committee, particularly the many members of the public who've taken the trouble to come tonight. Before the meeting starts, I would like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work. Robbie.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, if a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the Chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the Chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. When the public participants are invited to speak, their microphones will be made live by the committee officer. When members are requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room, and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the Chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? I'm not seeing any questions, so I will now hand back to the Chair.
Thank you, Robbie. Item 1, apologies for absence. There have been no apologies for absence received. Item 2, minutes of the meetings of the 16th of April and 21st of April 2026. We have 2 sets of minutes for approval at tonight's meeting. Unless members object, I propose that we take both of these together for approval. A reminder that if you were not present in one of the meetings, you should abstain from voting on the approval. I propose that we take as read and approve the minutes of the meetings of this committee held on the 16th and 21st of April 2026. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mantle, thank you. Any comments on the minutes? No. In which case, can I see those in favour of approving the 2 sets of minutes?
Thank you, Chair. That motion is carried.
Thanks, Robbie. Item 3, notification of other business. There is none. Item 4, Chair's announcements. 1, recording. In accordance with Council policy, this meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available both on the Council's YouTube channel as well as on the Council's ModGov site alongside the documents from this meeting. 2, declaration of interest. Members are reminded to make declaration of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the Chair's announcement on the agenda. 3, to clarify matters for the registered speakers. Thank you to members of the public for joining us this evening. To confirm, speakers will each have between 3 to 5 minutes to make their verbal presentation to the committee. You should have been told your time allocation. All speakers will receive a warning when you have 1 minute remaining. Following the conclusion of your time, members will be invited to ask points of clarification. At the end of your allotted time, you'll be advised that the time allowed has ended. 4, debate procedure. In order to move to a debate on an item, we will require a proposer and seconder for a motion at the appropriate time in the meeting. This should take into account the information in the officer's report and will follow the officer presentation and any public presentations, including member advocates, as well as any questions of the officer and points of clarification to the public presenters. As a reminder for members, should you wish to propose a motion contrary to the recommendation included in the officer report, you'll be required to provide clear and evidence reasons for this proposal. Section 4.8.23a. For the purposes of clarification, in order to vote on an agenda item at this meeting, a member must be present for the entirety of the debate and consideration of that item. If a member leaves the room at any point of the item, they will not be able to vote. 6, meeting cut-off. As outlined under 4.8.24g of the Council's Constitution, if the meeting proceeds to 10:30 p.m, the item being considered at that time will be the final item considered at tonight's meeting. The remaining business will be deferred to the next meeting of the committee, which is scheduled for Thursday, the 18th of June. 5, public participation. if I can check people here. So for agenda item 6, I have Liz Curry. Welcome. Ian White. Welcome. Martin Newman. Councillor Rolf Munzer. Catherine Ventham. Was that the correct pronunciation, Catherine? Thank you. Agenda item 7, I have Reed Parish Councillor Simon Aries. Welcome. Rosanna Metcalf. Thank you. And for agenda item 8, I have Hayley Doyle. Welcome. David Clifton. Welcome. Councillor Tom Tyson. I know you are. And Ross Fraser. Welcome, Ross. So we'll move on to the first application tonight, which is application 25-01766 OP, land on the south side of Cowards Lane, Caldicot. Sean Greaves to present. Sean, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. This application seeks outline planning permission for up to 30 dwellings. All matters except access to the site are reserved for later approval. The site is located outside the settlement boundary of Caldicot and within the Greenbelt, and forms about half of local wildlife site called Meadow Northwest of First Spring. Could I have the first slide, please? Thank you. This is a site location plan showing the site edged red. The site is a paddock covering about 1.39 hectares on the southern edge of Caldicot. Access, as you can see, is off Cowards Lane, utilising an existing field access between the dwellings called Marlin on the left and Field House on the right. Dwellings on St Albans Road to the northwest, back onto the paddock, and dwellings on the Riddy to the east, also back onto the site. On the opposite side of Cowards Lane, you can see the recreation ground, and the other half of the local wildlife site, this local wildlife site, is to the southwest of the application site. Next slide, please. So this is a parameter plan, and it shows the extent of built form in beige, and the open space is shown green. There is identified to the bottom southern corner a local equipped area for play. That's that yellow star, and there's an indicative location for that local area for play, and the Suds Basin indicative location is on the eastern side, which is dotted in blue, I think it is from here. The dotted purple line crossing through the site is footpath 23, and that extends from Cowards Lane and goes down through those fields, joining St Albans Road further to the south. Next slide, please. This is the submitted concept master plan, which indicates how the site could be developed. Given that the application is outlined, this is for illustrative purposes only, so it just gives a general idea as to what the layout would be to achieve 30 dwellings on the site. Slide 3. Next slide, please. This is the proposed access arrangement. As you can see, the land shaded pink is the highway. That's a designated highway land. And the dotted blue lines at the entrance show the visibility displays, which are all within the highway. Footpath would be on the left-hand side of the access road, and that would extend along the the western side of Cowards Lane, southwestern side of Cowards Lane, up to the junction with St Albans Road. That would be a 2-metre wide footpath that's proposed in Cowards Lane. The works would be undertaken as part of a Section 278 agreement under the Highways Act. Next slide, please. The photos are next. So this is a photograph taken from St Albans Road, looking at that junction with Cowards Lane, and we are looking east at that point. You can see there that there's a weight restriction of 7.5 tons, and to the other side of that tree that with the pink blossom on is the local play area that I identified on the map before. Next slide, please. So this is a view looking along Cowards Lane towards the site entrance. So we're basically looking southeast. You can see drives to houses that front onto Cowards Lane. And on the left-hand side is a hedgerow, and behind that is the play area. Next slide, please. So we're at that same point, but we're looking back up towards St Albans Road and the junction. Next slide, please. And we're further down the lane, and we're looking back up to the northwest, still towards the junction with St Albans Road. Next slide, please. And here we're near the entrance, and we're now looking east along Cowards Lane. Next slide, please. This is a photograph taken at the entrance to the site. You can see on the left Field House. And behind the, I think, Leylandii there to the right is Marlin, another dwelling that faces the proposed access road. Next slide, please. And that is a photograph of the front elevation of Marlin. Next slide, please. And that's a photograph of the front elevation of Field House. Both these houses would face the proposed access road, and they face the existing access through to the field. Next slide, please. And this is a field gate. You'll see there's a pedestrian gate on the right-hand side to allow people access through the field and footpath 23. Further in the distance beyond is the southern boundary with the trees and other shrubbery vegetation. On the right-hand side, you can see a hedge that bounds the garden to Marlin, and there's obviously a caravan to the front of Field House on the left. Next slide, please. This photograph looking back towards that field gate. Marlin on the left, Field House on the right from that outlook. Next slide, please. And this is further into the site, looking back towards Marlin and Field House. Next slide, please. This is taken more centrally in the site, and this is looking basically towards the southwest. You can see behind those horses that seem to be having a chat in the middle of the field, their stables in the corner of the site. Next slide, please. This is a photograph from the site looking towards the rear gardens and the rear elevations of houses fronting St Albans Road. Next slide, please. And this is further in the site, looking back north towards Marlin and Field House and that northern boundary. And this slide is the point where the public footpath leaves the site at that southern end of the site. Next slide, please. And this is a view looking towards the houses from in the site, looking toward the houses on the Riddy, which is on the eastern side of the site. That's the end of the slides. Thank you very much. So this application has been fully reviewed and reconsidered in the light of legal submissions that were made by the applicant and advice provided by counsel sought by the council. I consider that the issues are finely balanced, with several considerations weighing in favour and against the proposal as set out in detail in the report. The report sets out details of the proposal, consultation notification responses, planning policies and material considerations, the harms and benefits that would arise, and the balancing exercise that has been carried out as set out in the report. It's considered that the tilted balance applies because the council does not have a 5-year housing land supply, and the harms that would arise do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when applying that tilted balance, and including the delivery of 50% affordable housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean, for that. Before I open up to questions from the committee, just a couple of points. One, the second one I'll say first would be if you could, for the benefit of the public, explain what the tilted balance is and how that works, because we know, but we can't assume everybody else does. If you do that first, I'll come back to the.
I'll do that. Yes, thank you. There is a document called the National Planning Policy Framework, and that's the national policies that the government set out that apply to England. And paragraph 11 of the National Planning Policy Framework sets out a presumption in favour of sustainable development. And in cases such as this, where local planning authority or local authority does not have a 5-year housing land supply, at the moment we have a 2.6 years supply. The paragraph 11 of the what I'll refer to the NPPF, which is the National Planning Policy Framework, basically dictates that notwithstanding that we have a recently adopted local plan and also a more recently adopted neighbourhood plan, the policies of those plans are out of date because we don't have a 5-year housing land supply. And what is called a tilted balance therefore applies. So any significant adverse effects from a development must significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in this NPPF. So what that means is that the tilt is in favour of development because of the benefits that would arise from the delivery of the housing at a time when we do not have sufficient supply. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. So to be clear, that the detriments, the harm it's seen that the application would do have to significantly outweigh the benefits, and this is what the committee are here to discuss. Sean, my other point I wanted to clarify for the benefit of the committee before we go off on too many tangents is I think we're all aware that this application came to the committee to the December the 18th meeting when it was withdrawn and not heard, but we are also, I think we all probably recall that there was a recommendation to refuse the application at that point on 2 points, which I think, and I'm sure you're correct if I'm wrong, were broadly harm to the local wildlife site and lack of mitigation on the impact on local infrastructure. And I guess before we debate anything else, what I want to be absolutely clear in my mind is what has changed since December. And do those objectives still stand in their own right?
Since December, in December, we received legal advice to the a legal opinion from King's Counsel regarding the approach that the council had taken in that report, and that approach did not fully and correctly follow planning policies. As a result of that legal opinion, the council sought our own legal advice, and the report does set out the concerns that the council's ecologist has with regards to the loss of the local wildlife site. However, this matter is covered by planning policies, and we have completely reviewed our approach to this site to this proposal and this site in the light of the legal advice that we received. And also since that date, the council have entered into Section 106 agreement with the landowner at Western Hills Baldock with regards to provision of biodiversity net gain land bank. So things have moved on with regards to that. So it's a little bit clear as to what we're talking about in terms of where compensation would take place. So the approach that our legal advisor told us is that with regards to local wildlife sites, that's the bottom of the hierarchy in terms of protection. And also with regards to providing any kind of mitigation, it is reasonable, and inspectors have accepted this, that compensation for the loss of a wildlife site can be provided off-site, and in this instance within the same local nature recovery area. And so, based upon the legal advice we've received, officers are now recommending approval, based upon the fact that compensation can reasonably be provided off-site and comply with planning policies, notwithstanding there would be harm to that local wildlife site from an ecological perspective. And our council's ecologist still objects to the proposal, but the ecologist is looking at it from an ecological point of view rather than from a planning policy point of view. And as planners, planning policy applications are determined in accordance with the development plan policies and other material considerations. And so the starting point is policies in the local plan, which sets out this hierarchy. So it's a result of a complete reassessment of the proposal against the legal advice we received. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Sean. That was really, really helpful. Okay, do members of the committee have any questions for the planning officer? Councillor Winstanley, Dave.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Sean, for that presentation. So further to what you just said, can I just clarify, A, that the tilted balance was engaged also in December last year when we would have seen this originally?
Yes.
So it was. So thank you. So now, based on the legal opinion that we have had, in the previous report, it used the word significant harm to biodiversity under Local Plan NE4, Codicote Neighbourhood Plan, and the NPPF 159 and 193A. Are you now saying that there is no significant harm?
Yes, the report sets out the harms, and there's a table set out towards the bottom that identifies the various weights given to the harm. And because in the light of advice received, it is considered that compensation can, as a last resort, rather than the first point of call, as a last resort, compensation can address the impacts upon the local wildlife site, that the harm has been downgraded to moderate.
Thank you.
There'll still be harm that would arise from it in officer view, because compensation is a last resort, and it's to the lower end of the hierarchy in terms of addressing impacts on wildlife, on local wildlife sites.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you, Dave. Councillor Tom Tyson. Tom.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation and very coherent explanations thereafter, Sean. Just a point of detail about this biodiversity net gain and offsetting and buying units in elsewhere. So the message that I was getting from your report was that Western Hills is the likely location for that to take place. Is that set now in terms of the Section 106 agreement? Has that been concluded? Is it imminent, or is this still very open-ended? Western Hills, as far as I'm aware, is a nature reserve, and does that have any implications for I don't know how to explain this, the value of the units being purchased there, given that there's already it's already a nature reserve? And the follow-up question to that is, if it's a nature reserve, is this local authority the owner of that land, or is this somewhere separate entirely from that nature reserve?
It's a biodiversity bank, basically, where people can purchase credits for provision of biodiversity on that site in whatever form it would make. There is a condition, and there will be a requirement, and the applicants have offered 15% net gain in biodiversity, and they will purchase credits to deliver that biodiversity at that. My understanding, it will be at the Western Hills site. Now, with regards to, that's completely separate. That's dealt with by condition. Originally, the applicants were suggesting that the compensation for the loss of the local wildlife site should be dealt with in a similar way by condition. And advice provided by our barrister indicated that a condition would not be appropriate in terms of delivering the compensation, and that should be dealt with through a Section 106 legal agreement, because that can achieve more detail and would not be in the form necessarily of provision of money to buy biodiversity credits as such, so that that can be translated into spending on a Western Hills bank, biodiversity bank. It would, in my view, require a scheme indicating what would be delivered and where. It would not necessarily be at that biodiversity land bank. It could be somewhere closer. It could, for example, be on land owned by the district council where we're seeking to enhance biodiversity. So it wouldn't necessarily be there, but that is an option that would be available, and we're clear as to the Section 106 has been signed between the council and the landowners to deliver Western Hills as a biodiversity land bank, and that could be an option that's available in order to compensate for the loss of the wildlife site. But other alternatives could be considered in the meantime if something else comes forward that is more appropriate in terms of delivering the compensation for the loss of the local wildlife site. And that Section 106 agreement would have to be agreed and signed before the planning permission is issued, which is also a difference between that and a condition. So it could be there, but it doesn't have to be there. And the further work would take place in order to firm up what the scheme would be. It would need to be to the satisfaction of our ecologists that it would deliver compensation relevant to the loss of the local wildlife site.
Thank you, Sean. Tom, did I answer your question?
There was just the query about whether this is in the site of the nature reserve or elsewhere.
Sorry.
Is this the part of Western Hills that we're discussing? Is this the nature reserve, or is this
well, it's a biodiversity bank basically. It's basically agricultural land at the moment,
Okay.
which will be put aside for delivering biodiversity net gain. So it's not currently a nature reserve.
No, okay.
But eventually it will be something similar to that in terms of it would deliver for 30 years biodiversity enhancements that people would purchase units for delivery of that biodiversity on that land. So it's not a nature reserve at the moment. It's just
Thank you.
agricultural land.
Understood.
So I can bring Nazanin in just before Louise.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick clarification. So the habitat banks that are referred to, they have to be registered as such for them to be utilised as habitat banks for biodiversity net gain. Sorry, did everybody hear that? Was my okay? Yeah. So the habitat banks have to be registered as such. So it can't just be any land. It has to be specifically a habitat bank that has been registered for biodiversity net gain purposes.
Thanks, Nazanin. Thank you. Councillor Louise Pearce. Louise.
Thank you. I just want to clarify something from the KC report, the KC that the council engaged. So at paragraph 46, they sort of sum up how they feel. So in the course of their report, they suggested this engagement to mitigate by purchasing the credits off site. But at the end, they go on to say the council's refusal would have been in line with the NPPF and its legal obligations. The two parties merely differ on the planning balance. So do I understand that it's the KC's point of view that even with the mitigation in place, this is still a fine balance of the planning balance?
Our council's view was it was for us to make the decision on the matter, really, and to weigh up the benefits and harms. Obviously, we need to apply the tilted balance, but the decision is the council's, and the council wasn't instructing us or advising us which way we should go in that decision-making process. As such, it is a matter for yourselves to make the decision at the end of the day.
Councillor Claire Winchester.
Thank you, Chair. Please forgive me, this is my first planning committee. And I was looking at the land use as it currently stands and the notion of it being heavily grazed and what that does to its value as a wildlife site. My question is, presumably those horses have to be housed and grazed somewhere. That and has the ecologists' report taken that into account, that there would be a further paddock site somewhere else that would need to be found that would then become degraded? So essentially, we haven't taken that potential harm into consideration here.
I don't think the ecologist considers the matter of what would happen if the horses grazed elsewhere. Obviously, if they grazed elsewhere and that was a local wildlife site, then there would be denigration of that land. But they wouldn't necessarily be put in a field that's a local wildlife site. But it would, obviously, horses do tend to overgraze, from my knowledge of these things, and that does affect whatever field they're put in terms of its biodiversity.
Councillor Louise Peace.
Sorry, it's me again. Can I ask a question about highways and the section 278 to put in the pavement that goes up to St Albans Road, I think it is. So this is an outline planning permission, so that S278 forms part of that. Would that pavement be put in place if a reserve matters went through and the houses were approved? Would that pavement be put in place before any construction commenced?
There is a condition recommended, but the pavement should certainly be in place before any first dwelling is occupied. Before somebody needs to use that pavement to gain access from this development. Sorry?
But not construction?
Not construction as such, no.
Councillor Martin Prescott. Martin.
Oh, thank you. I'm really following on from Councillor Tyson's points, and I think I'm hoping I'm following the thrust of his argument in the sense that I'm talking about the biodiversity net gain. I'm cynical about being able to provide a compensation in terms of financial or at a location significantly far away from the development site is really a biodiversity net gain. But I know these things are designated in law. My question really is about the loss of biodiversity in respect of the people that are living there. And I'm fortunate to live in a house which is surrounded by fields. I have the joy of having regular power cuts and water outages and everything. But the compensation is I can look out in my garden and I can see deer strolling around in the field and there's birds and Lord knows what else going on. I mean, I come from North London, so, this is all new to me. And I really enjoy it. And I wonder how the residents in that area, having presumably got used to all the biodiversity that's going on in the field, are going to feel about having to travel miles and miles to just enjoy it elsewhere. You're going to throw planning considerations back in my face. I know you are. But I'm concerned about how that will affect all of the people living in the area when they lose that biodiversity, because as we know from all of the reports, that will be lost in that area and will be having to be compensated by mitigating factors elsewhere.
No applause, please. You just encourage them. Sean.
I'm not sure I've got any comment to that. That was more of a statement, was it not?
Well, I think when we're talking about the planning officer's determination on an application that is very finely balanced,
yeah.
I mean, how much weight do you give to the fact that I know in terms of biodiversity and the bats and the voles and the whatever, we can, in law, we can find suitable accommodation for that elsewhere. But how do you feel that it affects the people that are currently living there and the children or whatever that are going to lose it?
Yes, the report does address that, and the council's ecologist also raises significant concerns about the loss of ecology locally and the effect that has locally. And the report clearly states that we've given moderate harm to that loss of local ecology. It has been tempered by the fact that off-site compensation can be achieved, but the report still identifies that there would be harm locally, yes.
Well, it's a subjective opinion, though. You're saying the report in your report you've designated it as moderate harm, which has been downgraded with the benefit of Council's advice. I understand that,
Yeah.
but it is an opinion.
It is. I'm employed to give my professional opinion. And yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Ruth Brown. Ruth.
I'd like to ask an entirely different question. So on the table where it talks about harm versus benefit, the golden rules are assigned significant benefit. Now, I've read the bit in the report about golden rules, and I have to say I'm really struggling to understand it. And I noted that the Herts and Middlesex Wildlife Trust also say that, in their opinion, it fails to comply with the golden rules, but the report states that it does comply with it, and the report has allocated significant benefit to that. So can you explain a bit more about why how the golden rules are met and why the significant benefit is assigned to it? Thank you.
Yes, the report looks at the golden rules, and I note what was stated by the Wildlife Trust. So at paragraphs 3.27 onwards, we consider what the golden rules are, and what that involves. Now, paragraph 157 to 158, I believe, of the NPPF sets out matters relating to the golden rules. Just bear with me, I'll bring that up. So 156 sets out what the golden rules are. And there's three elements to what is described in there as the golden rules. The first one is the provision of affordable housing. And in this instance, 50% of affordable housing. That's one of the golden rules. The second golden rule is necessary improvements to local or national infrastructure are provided. And the report sets out what the improvements to infrastructure would be, including the provision of a footpath along Cowes Lane and the Section 106 obligations that are set out in a table in the report that have been sought from the likes of the County Council's Growth in Infrastructure Unit, and also County Council Highways in terms of Strand 2 contributions to improve sustainable transport. And the final golden rule is the provision of or improvements to green spaces that are accessible to the public, and green spaces proposed in this scheme. And there would obviously be further provision off-site in terms of biodiversity. So those are the three rules, and the report considers those and comes to the conclusion that the golden rules have been met. Two paragraphs below 156, at paragraph 158 of the NPPF, it states where a development complies with golden rules, significant weight in favour of the grant of planning permission should be given. So when we've in any case where we consider on a grey belt site that's over 10 units that the golden rules have been met, we are required by the NPPF to give that matter significant weight in the determination of the application.
Yep, go on.
Thank you for that explanation. what I'm reading is that it's about green. You're saying it's about green spaces accessible to the public, and what I'm thinking, and along the lines that Martin was saying, actually, is that this green space is currently accessible to the public, but it will no longer be. And it also talks about local nature recovery strategies. That the green spaces are required as part of the Golden Rules should contribute towards meeting the outcomes of the local nature recovery strategy. I guess they do off-site, but not on-site. So I think it's interesting that the Herts and Middlesex Wildlife Trust take a different view, though, about it complying. And I think it's specifically about that number 3, the green spaces. So I would concur that it's quite subjective and quite balanced as to whether you actually say that it meets those golden rules or not. That's really my question is, obviously the report says it does, but there is a view that it doesn't.
So that's correct. As far as access to this paddock is concerned, members of the public can only use the route of the public footpath. If they stray from the public footpath, then they're trespassing on private land. So you're only supposed to follow the route of the public footpath. You're not supposed to wander around that field. It's not public open space.
Just before I bring Councillor McDonald, just to confirm that the footpath is straight down through the middle of the site.
Yes, there was a plan in the slides. It was the dotted purple line.
Yeah.
It goes straight down from the entrance to the an exit at the southern end. So it's basically straight north-south, straight across the middle of the field.
Thanks. Thank you. Councillor Caroline McDonald. Caroline.
Thank you. It was just a question about clarification on the footpath. The footpath we're talking about is going from the entrance to the site to St Albans Road and not the other way to the shops.
That's correct. It goes from Cowes Lane and goes through this field and beyond it, further south, it joins St Albans Road.
Sorry, no, I mean the footpath that's going to be built on.
Oh, the footpath. Yeah, so
it's going to St Albans Road.
Yeah. So the roadside, the roadside footpath would be built along the access road from the development on the left-hand side and up to the junction with St Albans Road to the northwest, basically, where the slide showed the junction with St Albans Road. It's on that southwest side of Cowards Lane to allow residents of the development to access to get to St Albans Road, which was at a footpath which can take you further into the centre of Codicut.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no more questions for the officer, so we will move on to the just to thank Sean for very thorough answers to a lot of questions. So I believe we've changed the running order for the speakers. So apologies if I get this wrong. So I think our first public speaker is Ian White. And Ian, you have 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you've got a minute left.
Good evening. My name is Ian White, and I live directly next door to the proposed development site at Cowards Lane. For me, this is not an abstract planning matter. This is about my home, my immediate surroundings, and the place where my family lives every day. If this development goes ahead, it will sit directly alongside my family's home. The impact will be immediate and permanent. During construction, we will face heavy vehicle movements, sustained noise, dust and disruption to access. It is the long-term impact that matters most. Once complete, this change becomes part of our daily lives, with an access road to this development replacing the existing footpath. There is also the personal impact. Around 60 households in the immediate and surrounding area are strongly opposed because they understand what this will mean in practice. This development will fundamentally alter the character of the area. What is currently open countryside at the edge of the village hall will become built form. For those of us living here, that means a permanent loss of privacy, increased noise, and a very real change in how we experience our homes. This proposal is already causing stress, anxiety and uncertainty for those of us most directly affected. There is also a wider and critical point. This site was not included in the agreed Codicut Village Plan. This village plan was approved in May 2025, achieving 90% support from residents, and has since been adopted by the North Herts Council. Previous application for development on this land in 1989 was rejected on safety grounds, as Cowards Lane was then, and still is, a narrow rural lane. Single track in places with no pavement.
1 minute.
It already supports more than 200 residents and their vehicles. There is no safe separation between cars and people. Adding further housing will increase traffic on a road that is simply not designed to accommodate it safely. This proposal will add further pressure to already overstretched village infrastructure and public services. It is not covered by the village plan and is not supported by the community. This is the wrong development in the wrong place, with a very real and lasting negative impact on the people who live there. In summary, this will have an immediate and permanent impact on neighbouring residents, with a significant loss of privacy and rural character. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you for sticking to time. Liz Curry next. Yeah, Liz, you've got 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you've got a minute left.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Liz Curry. I'm a resident and community organiser in Codicot. I would like to focus on what this proposal means for the safety and functioning of our village as a whole. Codicot has already agreed to substantial development through the village plan, including around 355 new homes. Importantly, around 40% of these homes are either not yet built or are not occupied, meaning the full impact on roads, services and community life is still to come. This proposal sits outside that plan. This matters because the plan is the mechanism by which growth is coordinated so that traffic, infrastructure and safety impacts are properly considered together. When development happens outside that framework, those impacts are no longer managed in a joined-up way. Cowards Lane is already heavily used and has no pavements. It is shared by residents, pedestrians, children and older people. It's also used by residents of a nearby retirement complex, meaning some of the more vulnerable people in the village rely on this route. This proposal will increase traffic on that lane and on connected routes. Once the development at the High Street end of Cowards Lane, Weaver's Gate, is fully occupied, there will be a significant increase in traffic using Cowards Lane before adding the impact of this proposed development. All of that additional traffic feeds into the wider village network. At peak times, particularly around the school footpath entrance and on the High Street, congestion is already a serious issue. The entrance to the school is already a known pressure point with safety risks for children and families. The school itself has recently been expanded but is already nearing capacity in some year groups before the majority of planned housing are occupied. The village plan was designed to manage the cumulative impact of multiple developments. Development outside the plan increases pressure without coordination and without assurance that infrastructure can cope. Finally, this concern is shared widely. Nearly 200 objections have been submitted from across the village, not just from those living closest to the site. This is about safety, about protecting vulnerable residents, and about ensuring that development happens in a way that our village can sustain. So in summary for the panel, around 40% of the planned housing is not yet occupied, and there will be significant additional traffic on local roads. There's a direct risk to children and elderly residents, and school congestion and capacity is already under pressure. And there have been nearly 200 objections across the village showing widespread concern.
Thank you very much. I think that was spot on time. The third public speaker I have is Martin Newman.
Good evening. My name is Martin. I'm speaking as a lifelong Codicut resident. First on ecology. This is a designated local wildlife site contributing to a landscape of environmental distinctiveness, biodiversity, wildlife habitat and accessible green space for the community. It forms part of a wider chalk stream environment, which is a rare and highly sensitive ecological system with opportunities to support local nature recovery strategies. The proposal relies on biodiversity offsetting at a location more than 10 miles away. Remote offsetting biodiversity does not replace what is being lost here in Codicut. The value of this land lies in its location, its connection to our chalk stream environment, and its role in our local ecological network. Removing it breaks that connectivity and diminishes biodiversity where it currently exists. It also removes accessible green space from the community, which cannot be replaced remotely. In both environmental and social terms, this is not a like-for-like replacement, does not mitigate the harm being caused, and is at odds with Codicut Neighbourhood Plan Objective 14. Secondly, on transport and safety. Cowards Lane is a constrained rural route with sections that are single track and no pedestrian infrastructure. It already serves over 200 residents with 4 roads using it as their only access. The completion of the Weathersgate development at its southern end will add to this increasing pressure. With the addition of 400 new development homes, traffic volumes across the village have increased significantly. This proposal introduces further traffic into a network that is already struggling. As the site has not been identified within the local plan, the cumulative traffic impact has not been properly assessed or mitigated. In planning terms, this creates a clear risk of increased congestion, reduced pedestrian safety, and a breakdown of safe movement within the village. Finally, I'd like to draw your attention to what the proposed Section 106 agreement actually tells us. It confirms that this development will have impacts. It accepts the need for funding towards schools, services, and infrastructure. But when you look closely, those contributions are almost entirely directed elsewhere. They are strategic, dispersed, not tied to the realities on the ground in Codicut. What is missing is just as important as what is included. There is no secured improvement to Cowards Lane, no guaranteed mitigation for traffic safety on a constrained rural route, no commitment to address the pressures that residents have described clearly and consistently. Even the highways contribution, while significant in total, is generic and flawed. It offers no certainty that the specific risks in this location will ever be addressed. Offering to offset local wildlife many miles away is not an equivalent outcome. So we're left in a position where the impacts are known, but the mitigation is uncertain, non-local, or absent. And that goes to the heart of planning policy. A Section 106 agreement must make a development acceptable in planning terms. This one does not do that for this place, on this site, for this community. For those reasons, we respectfully ask that you refuse this application.
Thank you. Thank you. I've just realised after each speaker, I should have taken points of clarification from members after each speaker. So my apologies to the members. Can you remember who you have your question for? If we have any questions. Do we have any questions for the speakers? Caroline.
Yes, I think all 3 speakers spoke of Cowards Lane and the lack of pavements. There's absolutely no pavement on that lane. Is that correct? Thank you.
To the public speakers. I didn't see any earlier. No. Right. In which case, can I call the member advocate, Councillor Rolf Muntzer? Councillor Muntzer, I hope you're as timely as the residents were. You have 5 minutes.
I shall certainly do my best. But Chairman, colleagues, on the facts presented to you tonight by both the officers, by the council's opinion, and even on the basis of the argument put forward by the applicant themselves, this application is finely balanced. Your job tonight is to determine where that balance should lie. And in order to do so, I would submit to you that you need to look and zoom out. You cannot look at this site purely in isolation. You need to zoom out on the applicant's argument to Royston, but we will discuss that in due course. Codicot is a community. It is a village of which is under strain. As part of the local plan that was adopted in 2022, Codicott was subjected to over 300 new homes. As part of that local plan, flawed though it is, there have been assessments made as to the cumulative impact of that development on our village, and has been rightly highlighted tonight. The issues and the pressures that Codicott faces are not yet fully realised or materialised. This application is only set to increase those pressures and to make Codicott a worse place to live. This application is harmful to the community. And whilst I accept that in the period between the adoption of the local plan and tonight, there have been significant changes to the planning policy framework, the local plan and the supplemental development strategies, particularly that surrounding sustainability, should still be in your minds and support you in trying to operate within a clear framework. This land in the local plan was designated as Greenbelt, and I certainly believe that it is and remains so even with those changes. But I want to talk about access because, as has been highlighted already, Cowards Lane is simply that. It is a country lane which has had an awful lot of development built and constructed around it. There is no footpath there, and I'm frequently contacted by residents in the new development on Weaver's Gate about the struggles that they face with trying to get their children to school. And whilst I will accept that the construction of a certain length of footpath would potentially assist with that, it certainly will not help with all of the vehicular traffic and the increased vehicular traffic that we will see, not only from this development, not only from the developments that we see at Weaver's Gate and at the Heath, but of all of the developments right across North Herts, because Codicott is a major artery and the High Street is always congested, and it will continue to be so unless we put in place the appropriate infrastructure in order to mitigate that. It was mentioned earlier on as to the Section 106 agreement. The reality is that there is very little money actually being invested into the crucial public services in Codicott. There is very little money of which is being allocated to relieve the pressures and to mitigate what officers accept is harm to residential amenity. The community have not been consulted on this. They have not had the opportunity to put forward their views as to the appropriate infrastructure that would potentially offset any negative impact. But I want to just focus in my final minute on really what is the fundamental argument that we are having here tonight, and that is surrounding biodiversity net gain. This council passed a resolution to declare a climate and biodiversity emergency. If colleagues are serious about that, if they are serious about fulfilling their obligations to that, the reality, they should reject this application tonight. The reality is that whether it be in Codicott, there is a net loss of biodiversity. And even if you have the land bank up in Royston, there is still a net loss of biodiversity in the district. And therefore, colleagues, I would submit to you this evening that if this application is passed, it sets an incredibly dangerous precedent for development in this district. You must be sure that this application is not going to cause harm. It does, and I would urge you to submit it, to reject it in the strongest possible terms.
Thank you, Thank you, Rolf, and bang on time. Do we have any points of clarification from the members to Councillor Munster? Councillor Fernandez, Emma.
Yes, Councillor Munster, you mentioned the new development at the other end of Cowards Lane. I'm not that familiar with Codicott. I don't know where the primary school is. Am I right in understanding that the residents of that estate will have to go up Cowards Lane in order to access the school?
Thank you very much, Councillor Fernandez, for that question. And I can confirm that is indeed the case. And I am frequently contacted by parents of whom now are moving into the Weavers Gate development, who are concerned about the incredibly fast vehicle speeds down Cowards Lane. And of course, if we see this application approved, then that's only going to get worse, and we're only going to see more vehicles posing a risk to, vulnerable road users, including children.
Okay, do we have any further questions to Councillor Munzer? No. Okay. In which case, I will call the applicant's agent, Catherine Ventham. Catherine, you have 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have a minute left.
Thank you. Chair, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Catherine Ventham. I'm a Senior Director at 25, and we coordinated this application on behalf of the applicant, Horridge Land. Horridge Land is part of the WE Black Group of companies, a family-owned SME house builder operating across the southeast of England. I'd firstly like to start by thanking officers across all departments for the time they've spent working on this application over the last year, which has culminated in their recommendation this evening. This recommendation is one based on agreement that the site is Greybelt, which effectively means that the proposal before you is appropriate development in the Greenbelt. In addition, assessment of the scheme by officers confirms that the benefits accruing through the grant of planning permission outweigh the adverse impacts. In this case, those significant benefits include the provision of 30 new homes at a time when the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing, including 50% affordable housing, which is 15 homes, open space and a new play area, the upgrade to the public right-of-way through the site, and the facilitation of significant off-site BNG at 15% and ecological enhancements. To briefly touch on some of the matters which have been discussed this evening, it is agreed that the site does form part of a local wildlife site. However, not all areas of land are considered equal. With regard to the application site, it was also agreed with officers that this particular parcel of land, whilst forming part of that local wildlife site designation, does not meet the designation criteria. The application site has been heavily grazed by horses for a number of years, and this would continue absent the grant of planning permission. Thus, even in a no development scenario, it would not make a meaningful contribution as a local wildlife site. The applicant and the council have, with their respective legal teams, worked together to find a solution which will actually deliver ecological betterment for North Herts District Council and secure a greater contribution towards the council's local nature recovery strategy than is currently the case or would be the case in a do-nothing scenario. The council, as confirmed in your officer report, have secured land adjacent to Western Hills Nature Reserve as part of a wider proposal for a suitable area in which to achieve compensation. And this area is defined as having particular importance for biodiversity in the local nature recovery strategy. And our section 106 will include provisions for ecological enhancement. This is clearly a betterment upon the existing situation and also upon a no development scenario, as the scheme at Western Hills will deliver approximately 6.4 hectares of flower-rich neutral grassland on what is currently arable land within the wider habitat bank. And to answer one of the questions earlier on the council advice, on the council's council advice, it is important to note that her advice was received prior to the council signing up that habitat bank, and elsewhere in her legal opinion, she does confirm her view that it would be possible to compensate. Turning to other matters, we are aware that residents have raised issues with regards to the local highway network. However, ourselves and the council officers have liaised with the Highway Authority through the application, and no objection is raised by them. We will be delivering 2 crossing points further afield and the footpath along Cowards Lane, which has already been mentioned, alongside other highway contributions. We also note the comment about this area being used for the enjoyment of local residents. However, as has already been stated, whilst there's a public right-of-way through the site, which will be retained and upgraded, public access is limited to that footpath only. There is no public access to the site as a whole. I make 4 key points then in summing up. Firstly, the site will make a significant contribution towards the delivery of market and affordable housing. I highlight that in the forthcoming NPPF, expected next month, the delivery of housing, no matter the size of site, will be afforded significant weight in the planning balance. In addition, proposals to support sites of this size are also expected to be introduced as part of a wider government commitment to supporting SME builders, such as my clients, to ensure greater choice and competition in the housing market. Secondly, the collective benefits of the development would be significant as set out in your officer report. Third, it is agreed that the site is grey belt and development is therefore appropriate development. However, the planning balance shows that even if we were not grey belt, very special circumstances would be demonstrated such that the recommendation would be the same. And finally, we consider that the development of this site has the ability to deliver a substantial ecological benefit compared to a do-nothing scenario. We therefore wholeheartedly support your officer recommendation for the grant of planning permission this evening and hope that you will follow that recommendation. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Do members have any points of clarification for the applicant's agent? Councillor Claire Winchester. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. The applicant's agent mentioned that, just to clarify, she said this provided a significant contribution to housing, whereas the report talks about a modest contribution to district housing targets. Now, I always assumed that modest fell somewhere between minimal and moderate, and not anywhere near significant. Is that the case?
So the different weight that's been afforded is a matter of planning judgment between ourselves and the council officers. I would say that because there's a shortfall in housing land supply, therefore a contribution of 30 homes is a significant contribution. Council have taken the view that it's a moderate contribution. As I said, we're expecting a new NPPF next month, and that's going to afford significant weight to all housing developments, no matter the size.
Okay, for Councillor Winchester's benefit, you can probably ask that question again to our officers very shortly if you want clarification on it. Councillor Ruth Brown. Ruth.
Thank you. Can I just ask you to confirm about the footpath that's proposed? So we've already discussed the footpath going along Cowards Lane to St Albans Road. Is there any plan to include a footpath in the other direction, east along Cowards Lane towards the High Street?
No, the footpath that we've been asked to provide by the Highway Authority goes west only.
I have no one else signalling. If there's no other questions, then I would invite the committee. Do you have any other further questions to our planning officers? Councillor Winchester.
Thank you. Can I just ask that question again then of officers? How we judge modest and what we mean by modest in terms of contribution of housing, and where that sits. As I say, I imagine modest to be somewhere between minimal and moderate, not significant. Is that the case?
Thank you. As far as the approach that officers have taken, it is somewhat different from the appellant's agent in terms of the contribution, first of all, that the scheme would make towards the district-wide housing shortfall and the weight to be given. My view is that 30 dwellings overall would make a modest contribution to the housing district's housing land supply. It will still be a positive contribution to that supply at a time when there's a shortfall. As far as the weight that should be given, that's set out in Table 2 at paragraph 4.8 of the report. And in terms of both of those matters, the delivery of 15 market homes and the delivery of 15 affordable homes, that's 50% overall affordable. We've attributed significant weight to the delivery of the affordable homes and moderate weight to delivery of the market homes within the context of the district-wide need. There's clearly an unmet need for affordable housing in the district and a shortfall of housing land supply. But we're supposed to supply 5 years. That's a minimum. It's not a ceiling, it's a minimum supply, and we're currently at 2.6 years supply. And however, if this scheme was significantly larger, its contribution would be greater to that shortfall. And so I've taken the view that it's a modest contribution overall, and moderate weight should be given to the market housing benefit, and significant weight should be given to the affordable housing benefit.
Thank you, Sean. Councillor Val Bryant. Val.
Thank you. when I was reading the papers this afternoon, I was trying to follow through the different strands in the report about grey belt, because they're scattered all over the place and are not developed. Could you possibly just synthesise where we are with grey belt on this application?
Yes, the assessment against grey belt is set out in the report in a fair amount of detail. As far as assessing this application is concerned, it's not been assessed as being previously developed land, albeit there are cases where equestrian uses constitute previously developed land. The submission by the applicant has been that it's hasn't put forward the case that it's previously developed land. So under those circumstances, we consider what is grey belt and whether it meets those grey belt purposes. Now, when it comes to basically greenfield sites, that's sites that aren't previous developed land, there are, you consider it the proposal against the purposes of the green belt, 3 of the purposes of the green belt, and whether the proposal would make whether the site makes a strong contribution to those purposes. And if you just bear with me, I'll bring up the section of the report for my own benefit that addresses this matter. Just give me a little while. I'm probably better off bringing up the national policy framework for my own benefit, which considers grey belt. And that's the definition of grey belt is set out in the glossary, an appendix to the National Planning Policy Framework. And so for the purposes of grey belt, it's grey belt if it doesn't contribute strongly to 3 of the 5 purposes of the grey belt, which is set out at paragraph 148 of the framework. So that's purposes A, B, and D. And the report assesses this proposal against those purposes. As far as purpose A is concerned, that is sorry, 143, paragraph 143 rather than 148 of the framework, sets out 5 purposes. And purpose A is to check the unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas. The planning practice guidance that the government's published sets out further advice as to what a large built-up area is, and it specifically excludes villages as being a large built-up area. So whilst Codicut is a category A village, as lots of facilities that make it just below the top tier of in the settlement hierarchy, it's not a town or a large built-up area. I believe the authority has come to the view that there are 4 large built-up areas in the district, and those are the 4 towns in the district. So that's obviously Royston, Hitchin, Bollock, and Letchworth, where we are now. So so that's purpose A. And with regards to purpose B, is to prevent neighbouring towns merging into one another. as the site is not adjacent or between two towns, then it wouldn't contribute towards the merging of those two towns. So it doesn't strongly contribute to purpose B, to prevent neighbouring towns from merging. And the final purpose is to preserve the setting and special character of historic towns. It's not within the setting of an historic town, it's right on the edge of Codigat. So it doesn't contribute to that purpose either. So when assessing this site against those three of the five purposes, we've come to the view that it is grey belt, and that's what's set out in the NPPF. And therefore different provisions apply where a site is grey belt compared to those elements of those parts of the green belt that are not. So, for example, if the site was immediately adjacent to a large town, it is possible that we could say that a larger site, for example, could fail purpose A, that is to check the unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas, but we're not in such a location.
Thank you. Sean, do you have any further items from the debate you wish to respond to?
No, I think the matter that I was going to raise was to identify the differences between our assessment of the weight to be given to the benefits that would arise from the delivery of the affordable and the market housing compared to that set out by the applicant's agent. But even in applying that lesser weight, what the applicants have done, in the planning balance, we've come to the view when applying the tilted balance that the harms that we've identified, and we have identified several harms and given weight to them, do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of delivering the proposed development. Thank you.
Thank you. And do members have any further questions for the planning officer? Councillor Peace.
Yeah, can I just pick up on that, being as you just touched on that? The housing supply officer from the council didn't seem to be satisfied with the affordable housing mix that was proposed, to do with whether people had to have a direct link to Codigat and whether there should be more social rent versus other kinds of affordable housing. Could you perhaps just elaborate on what happened there, that discussion?
Yes, as has been mentioned earlier, there's 4 allocated sites for housing development around Codigat, and part and parcel of that is to meet that's to meet the district-wide need, but also meets a certain local need. In this case, the applicants have put forward this application as contributing towards meeting the shortfall in the district-wide need, and we agree that this proposal has been assessed on the basis that it would contribute towards reducing the shortfall in district-wide housing land supply, and therefore it's considered that the staircasing should relate to the district-wide need rather than a need for Codigat, because that's what this housing is seeking to contribute towards, not the needs of Codigat, but the district-wide need for housing.
If we have no further questions for the planning officers, we will head towards a debate. The officer's recommendation is to grant permission. Unless members are minded to propose a different recommendation on this item, along with the material planning reasons, I shall therefore be proposing that we grant permission. Okay. Therefore, I propose that we grant planning permission subject to A, the completion of a satisfactory legal agreement that delivers the obligations set out on the agreed heads of terms at Table 1 and a scheme of compensation for the loss of LWS, and B, the applicant agreeing to extend the statutory period to complete the agreement if required, and C, providing delegated powers to the Development and Conservation Manager to update conditions and informatives with minor amendments as required, and D, the conditions as set out in the report. May I have a seconder?
Happy to second, Chair, but reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Okay, we are in debate. Councillor Brown, Ruth.
There are many, many things that are of great concern about this application. So many, it's difficult to list them. I feel that the main reasons that it's been recommended to be granted is because of the grey belt designation and because of the tilted balance. If we had a 5-year land supply, we would not be here talking about this tonight. And on top of all of that, whilst I welcome 50% affordable houses, 15 affordable houses well worth having, having been down to Codicott several times when I was cabinet member for planning and seen the congestion and the construction traffic and all the problems caused by the current sites being built out and seeing how many houses they already have, this is not, it feels to me like Codicott is being asked to absorb additional 30 houses on top of the 355 just to meet the district's need. This is not acceptable. In my view, it's not acceptable. I can't support it. And it has many other problems like the wildlife issue. In my view, an offset in Western Hills, which by the way is not in Royston, it's in Baldock, but nevertheless is 10 miles away from this area or more. It doesn't compensate the local people for that loss of green space and loss of biodiversity, as Councillor Prescott said earlier. We haven't even begun to talk about flooding either. And, it seems to me the highways objected several times, the flood authority objected several times. Somehow those objections have been overcome and removed, but they are nevertheless of concern. And a footpath from Cowards Lane to St Albans Road does not compensate for the risks to children walking along that lane because there's nothing in the other direction. I cannot support it. I'm sorry, but I will be voting against this application. Thank you.
Thank you. I am slightly bemused though, because the committee just had an opportunity to recommend whether we support it or not, and nobody put a counter proposal in. So, but we will carry on the debate. Caroline.
So I was going to recommend us refusing this on the grounds that I don't think the Earth can cope with it, but I didn't think that was a planning reason. But I've got two really big issues with this, besides what Ruth has said already. The first one is the flooding. There's no flood risk. There is actual flooding. I drove through Codicott on Tuesday in the rain and there was rivers coming down the road. It was terrifying, actually. So there is, from the existing application, there is flooding. So adding this one on top is going to just make it even worse. And the second big concern is sustainable travel and the fact that people are not going to be able to access the high street, get onto buses, etc., and go to the shops. So they're likely going to drive there, which is probably about 200 meters, if that. So those are my two, and yeah, those are my two big, besides what has already been said.
Councillor Prescott Martin.
For once in my life, I'd actually write some notes so I could actually do this in a coherent fashion, but you beat me to it. I'm comfortable with this application. I appreciate it's a question of balance, and Sean said repeatedly that it is a relatively fine balance. Having just spent 2.5 hours after Robbie forced me to go through all the training, and I did this just yesterday, it's fresh in my mind. It feels so uncomfortable that we are constrained. We're supposed to be living in a democracy. Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to turn this into some great political speech, but we're supposed to be living in a democracy. And yet when substantial numbers of people in local communities come up with very sound reasons for objecting to a development, nobody is saying they don't want to build houses anywhere. Nobody is saying that. We all understand that people need houses. Affordable housing is very important. Young people trying to get on the housing ladder, it's vitally important for the future of our nation. But the problem is we're accepting this kind of development. And Sean again made the point, this is helping the district rather than the local community. It's clearly not helping the local community. And my worry is that we're in danger of effectively throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're building 30 or 15 affordable homes, 30 homes, but 15 of which are affordable. And as a result, we're compromising the living conditions and the ability to enjoy peaceful life of everybody else in the area. And it just seems unacceptable to me. My problem, of course, and before Sean jumps in and tells me, is that we have to base any decision we make tonight upon planning grounds, material planning considerations. And it's not entirely obvious why some of these are important and why other matters are utterly unimportant. And as I said, having done the 2.5 hours worth of training just yesterday, it's fresh in my mind. I'm with Councillor Brown on this. I think the balance, I think the officers' estimation of the balance in favour of approval is flawed. And I think there are very many reasons why we should object to this application and why we should refuse it tonight.
Councillor Louise Peace.
Thank you, Chair. So back in December, there was a recommendation that this should be refused. And at that time, this was a grey belt site. And at that time, the tilted balance was in force. So those two matters are the same. The only difference now is that there has been a suggestion that the ecological harms can be mitigated by off-siting the BNG. Now, the Codicot neighbourhood plan is really clear that it says local wildlife sites and other significant habitats will be protected from any harmful impacts of development in accordance with their status. So I'm afraid this proposal is completely contrary to that. This is a local wildlife site. The council's ecologist has objected. The Herts and Middlesex Wildlife Trust have objected. And I've sat at these meetings for so many times accepting that it's planning law that we can off-site BNG. But this is contrary to the neighbourhood plan, and we just cannot do that with a local wildlife site. So I take your point, Chair, and yes, I should have pressed my button, but I can't support this application.
Yeah, I can't deny I am slightly bemused that we sat through an opportunity to recommend either accepting, rejecting, or deferring, and we chose to go forward with a recommendation to accept. And then I've just heard a third of the committee come forward and all say that they'll be opposing it. I just for perhaps for future reference, we perhaps need to think out what we're doing. However, let's continue to. I would like to hear what other members think, and if anybody, as we've always stated, if anybody is minded to vote against the officer's recommendation, as you are absolutely entitled to do, we do ask that you have come forward with your material grounds for doing so. Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I know I seconded this, but this was just for the purpose to move the debate on. And it is a very finely balanced thing. I think it is quite subjective in a way, and I feel the pressure is on us as a planning committee to determine one way or the other. And I, in all conscience, don't think I can vote in favour of this for two reasons, really. Partly because of the damage to a local wildlife site. And I do also take on board what the applicant said, that it is currently quite degraded, but it's also in the local nature recovery strategy and could recuperate and become quality grassland, which is what it was designated as in the first place. If it is built upon, that's never going to happen. And obviously the other problem for me is the sustainable transport and the fact that there isn't a pavement from the other end, from the high street up to St Albans Road, where people are going to be taking their children to school. And I feel that is endangering the public safety. So I will not be able to support this.
Do we have anyone else? Councillor Mantle, I knew you'd speak.
I think this is a fairly unsatisfactory application, but I'm having great difficulty in finding any planning reasons to reject it. This is the difficulty. I would like to reject it. I would like to find some reasons, but frankly, on the information we have and on the planning report, I can't actually find any. Otherwise, I'd love to support rejecting it. I don't think that the the main reason I think it's unsatisfactory is encroaching into the green belt to sort of nibble, nibble, nibble. And if we don't put a stop to it, then we're going to end up back in the situation between the wars where large swathes of countryside were nibbled away, including even the fields between Hitchin and Letchworth, for information. But I do not think that we have a strong enough case on this individual application. I think that we should be thinking in terms of how to best protect what Greenbelt, not on a negative way in which some of the pronouncements from government have come, but in a positive way, saying this is the benefit from the Greenbelt. This is what it does to make sure that development is in suitable locations. I think this is a very marginal one. I have difficulty supporting it, but I can't think of any decent planning reasons to reject it.
Councillor Prescott, you have already spoken, but I will bring you back in. I'm sure you have something to add.
Really, I was just going to step a little bit sideways from the argument just for a second. Applicant's agent seemed to suggest that there were really only two options. One is to allow the development, and in terms of the biodiversity and the quality of the land. One is to allow the development, and the other is to leave it as it is. But of course, there are plenty of other options. One of the other options being don't build on it, but then put some effort into reinstating it as a quality bit of grassland and play area and a good site for ecology and biodiversity. And it strikes me from what Councillor Peace said about the local plan and the objectives of the local community to enhance and develop the biodiversity and the ecological aspects of the local community, that actually the answers are already in front of us.
Thank you. Councillor Val-Bryant. Well,
thank you. This is a very fine balance. Codicote is a village, so it does not abide by the same rules on green belts. I put a lot of thought to the grey belt, which is why I asked the question. I find it very difficult to envisage having biodiversity net gain 9-10 miles away, but I cannot find any reasons, planning reasons, to actually reject this. In the back of my mind, though, I keep wondering, why can't we have a footpath on Cowards Lane? Why is this village in this position? It's too narrow. So why isn't there some bigger thinking about this, whereby the safety of the children of Codicote are actually thought about by the county council? Otherwise, surely every plan application that comes from Codicote is going to be exactly the same position. That was my side thought, because I just can't see why we can't get over that in some way, and it can't continue. Because you say the main road in Codicote gets busier and busier, but I cannot find any reasons that I could hold up and say, this is why I think it could be rejected. I think that actually it does actually tick all the boxes, unfortunately. Thank you.
Councillor Tyson, Tom.
I have to say this is one of the hardest applications I've ever seen in terms of trying to make a decision on it, and with all my heart I think that this is wrong, and the windfall site outside the settlement boundary in the Greenbelt, you know, a couple of years ago we wouldn't have been debating this at all. It would just be an open and shut case. We'd reject this application out of hand. Now we've got the tilted balance, we've got a definition of the purposes of the green belt, which don't serve villages at all. It's absolutely the most frustrating thing, and I feel really constrained by the legal situation of the planning regulations that we're bound by, but we are bound by them. And so I mean, it's still open to persuasion, but I would, you know, as I say, on an emotional level, reject this straight away. But in terms of our role here as a regulatory body, it's very difficult to do that, and I haven't got in my repertoire a good enough legal reason for not approving this, I'm afraid.
Thanks, Tom. Councillor Claire Winchester. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder why we bother doing neighbourhood plans, why we ask and consult residents over and over again, and we ask officers and residents to put so much work into setting a sustainable path for development for their settlement. And in Codicott's case, they've got 3 identified areas for building, and this is not one of them. 4, is it? Okay. But, you know, an awful lot already planned, accounted for, reported on, and this is outside that. So is it not the case that the neighbourhood plan is worth, it can be a material consideration? I mean, surely it can be taken into account here, and we can say that this application could be rejected because it is directly contrary to the neighbourhood plan.
I think if I may, well, I'll ask Sean, could you respond on that specific point? Sorry, Claire. Sorry. Sean, would you mind responding on that particular, as it was a specific question?
Thank you, Chair. The report does identify conflict with some policies of the neighbourhood plan. The neighbourhood plan, unfortunately, does not have any housing policies or any housing allocations. If the neighbourhood plan did have those, then it is possible that the tilted balance could have been disengaged because it's a recently adopted neighbourhood plan under the provisions of paragraph 14 of the NPPF, but it does not. The neighbourhood plan does not have any housing policies or allocations. As far as matters go, the report does identify conflict with some policies of the neighbourhood plan. However, as I said earlier, because the tilted balance applies and the council does not have a 5-year housing land supply, those policies are considered to be out of date, and therefore the weight given to them is diminished. And the report does spell out the identified harms, the conflict with both local plan and neighbourhood plan policies, and comes to, in the planning balance, a recommendation for approval, taking into account those conflicts with those policies in the neighbourhood plan and the local plan. Thank you.
Councillor Claire Billing. Claire.
I think my main issue is with the lack of footpath on Cowards Lane, sorry. I've listened carefully to all our speakers tonight and to colleagues as part of the debate. And I'm just, I'm in 2 minds on this one completely. I would like to hear somebody provide me with proper reasons why or how we can refuse this, because I really don't know how I will vote on this one.
Thanks, Claire. Councillor Louise Peace.
Can I just ask a question, Chair? Councillor Prescott referred to some planning training that we've all done recently. And I noticed that in the course of that training, the gentleman who delivered it, who was a very experienced planning inspector, I believe, said that in a situation like this, where the committee seemed minded to oppose the officer's recommendation, that the item should be deferred so that reasons can be sought why that recommendation could be supported.
I'm going to defer that to Nazneen or Sean, whoever wants it. They're fighting me to take the question.
Thank you, Chair. It is within members' gift to move a motion to defer an item that in the same manner would have to be put forward as a motion, seconded, debated on, and then a vote taken. Sean, would we have to vote on the motion on the table first? Yeah, because it's for, because this is for deferral, we'll have to conclude the debate and then go to the vote and move it.
May I ask a supplementary to the question, Sean, and then you can answer both, which is also, Louise very helpfully referred to the training. I believe it was also mentioned it's possible to defer in order to have a site visit.
Yes, I think that is the most common reason for deferral, so that people, members can go and visit the site and see for themselves the site's context, walk perhaps along Cowards Lane, and if you've not done so already. The most common reason normally for planning committees to defer is for members to go and visit a site if they've not done so already. Another reason can be for members to ask for further information or for further clarification, which would take time and can be reported back to a later committee. In this instance, it would be for members to raise concerns about the scheme and for time to be given to ascertain what reasons for refusal members may wish to come forward with. As members may be aware, a report was written, which was on the agenda back in 18th of December, which recommended a refusal. That is also for members to consider as to whether that remains a concern with regards to the loss of the local wildlife site. The table 2 at 4.4.8 identifies 3 harms, for example: impact upon local wildlife site, impact upon landscape and visual impact, that's very localized, and impact upon residential amenity. Members would be able to review the report, review the harms, and consider whether there is applying the tilted balance, because you have to apply the tilted balance. That is a requirement. Upon applying the tilted balance, you do not accept the officer recommendation and wish to put forward reason for refusal. So those can form the basis of deferral. But before you at the moment is a proposal to accept the officer recommendation, and it would be a matter for you to vote on that before considering any other proposal. Thank you.
Just before I bring Councillor Brown in, can I just check, as the mover of the proposal to accept, am I able to withdraw that proposal if my seconder was to agree to that, if I believe that the mood of the committee was to propose deferral?
I don't see why you can't withdraw his proposal.
Okay, well, I guess ultimately that'll be my decision as chair. Okay, sorry, Nazneen, and then I'll bring Ruth in.
Thank you, Chair. I think we were just nodding heads, but I just thought it'd be helpful to say out loud that, yes, Chair, if you were minded as the one who put the motion on the table, and Councillor Flanders seconded that motion, if you were both minded to withdraw so that a new motion is put on the table to defer, yes, you can do that.
Sit on that one for now. Councillor Brown, Ruth.
Thank you, Chair. So we've all talked about how finely balanced this is, and it's all about that table 2. And thank you, Sean, for drawing our attention to that. So I was going to suggest that as a committee, we might revisit table 2 and think about how we feel about the harms and the benefits, which might just tilt the balance the other way. So whether that would be then constitute a reason for refusal. Personally, I don't think a site visit's going to make a huge amount of difference, probably except to confirm that the lane is very narrow, and confirm if it's raining that there's a flooding issue, and confirm all those things. So personally, I'm not really in favour of deferral unless it would be to revisit and come up with some reasons for refusal. So that's just my view.
Councillor Prescott.
Thank you. You actually preempted something I was going to say earlier. I disagree with Councillor Brown, and of course I never disagree with Councillor Brown, as you know. But I actually think I would like to take a look at the site. I think a number of issues have been brought up by officers and by members of the public, and even, in fact, by the applicant's agent, which I think need further investigation. And I would be very happy to, if the chairman and the mover and the seconder were prepared to withdraw the motion, I'd be happy to move a motion that we defer pending a site visit and pending further investigation of Table 2 and to look very carefully at the balance and find out if a more comfortable solution can be found within planning grounds.
Thanks, Martin. Councillor Bryant, Val.
Thank you. I've just been looking with Councillor Billing at Google Maps at the area, and I would like a site visit because what I'm intrigued about is how the present housing actually gets the residents get their children to school, because there seems to be a lot of housing around there. So that I can actually envisage the scale, because at the moment I cannot envisage the scale of the length of this road and say, what do people at the moment do?
Okay. Yeah, far better for me to disagree with Councillor Brown, but I think Councillor Prescott has summed up my views on this. I did visit the site today, actually. And I confess I didn't walk across the whole field because I wasn't quite sure about the horses and whose side they were on. But I did visit. I did visit, and I agree with Councillor Bryan. I think actually this is one of those occasions that would help. I also think that respect for the people who've spoken in the room and whatever. I think to fully understand concerns. That's probably useful. So I am minded, and I should point out that Nazanin is our lawyer. So if she whacks me around the head, I've obviously said something wrong. But unless Nazanin whacks me around the head, I am minded to withdraw my my proposal to grant permission if the seconder agrees, and then hope that this goes properly and Councillor Prescott does what he said he was going to do.
I always say I always do what I say I'm going to do. So I would like to move a motion that we defer pending a site visit and pending further investigation of the delicate balance that we keep talking about. Can I also ask that this does not come back for the planning committee on the 18th, because it's the one in living memory that I can't make it to. So I know you guys in the planning department move at lightning speed normally, but I'd be obliged if we could leave it until I get back from holiday.
Thursday.
We need a second to stand way.
Councillor Billing, second. Thank you. Development and Conservation Manager will probably complicate it. No.
Reports have already been written for the 18th, so that's not possible, I'm afraid.
May I just ask one further question, Sean? In terms of legal timescales and whatever, deferral is viable.
It would be a matter for the applicants to consider whether they wish to allow us time to reconsider the matter, or whether they wish to appeal against failure to determine the application. That's a matter for the applicant, and I can't comment for the applicant.
Fine. Okay, so we now have a proposal in front that we defer the application to allow for a site visit and for further information. Say your words again, Martin.
I think it would be helpful to point out to the members of the public here tonight that the site visit is not for some huge posse to turn up on the day. We have to be allowed to visit just the planning committee members and the officers. No applicant, no objectors, no local community. I don't wish to be rude, but that's the way it has to be.
Thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Brown.
Regarding a site visit, last time we deferred for a site visit, it was organised at less than 2 weeks' notice in the afternoon of a weekday, and 4 people turned up, and only 2 of those ended up sitting on the planning committee. So I think if it's going to be meaningful, it has to be at a time when most of the planning committee can make it, and it therefore has to be at significant notice. We have to be offered several dates. Otherwise, this becomes meaningless. The other thing that I just want to highlight is our constitution currently says that unless you sat on the original planning committee, and I think everyone's here tonight, actually.
Everyone's here.
That's not a problem. You can't sit on when it's deferred.
As we discovered in the previous
Yeah,
application.
yeah.
Councillor Peace.
I do think we've probably got grounds to refuse here, but
So do
and I'm a bit worried that although it's my fault here for bringing up deferring in the first place, the only reason I mentioned deferring was because that planning officer suggested that if we wanted grounds for refusal against an officer recommendation, that's what we should do, that we should defer and not make decisions on the hoof and quickly try and find reasons in a rush and a hurry. So I do wonder whether we ought to be having a vote on refusing it. But if everybody is minded to go and look at the site, then so be it.
Sorry, Councillor Winchester.
Thank you. I'm with Councillor Peace on this. I think there are grounds to refuse this. The impact on local wildlife site, I think the evidence that we've heard indicates that it's actually quite significant harm. The impact on the landscape and visual impact, I think we can make a case that it is significant. And I think we've heard as evidence from residents today that the harm caused to residential amenity is also going to be significant in a number of different dimensions. So I think on those grounds we could turn this down without a site visit.
Indeed, but we are debating deferral at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
The other one comes next. We
Yeah,
could go through all three. It
But
has.
absolutely, I think that.
Councillor Brown.
I was just going to concur with my colleagues here and say, in addition to what Councillor Winchester's already said about the harms, we could agree with the Hertfordshire, Middlesex and Wildlife Trust view that the golden rules are not entirely met and therefore reduce that significant to maybe moderate as a benefit. So then the table swings. Personally, I will be voting against deferral.
Okay. We'll be here as long as it takes, Councillor Prescott, and hopefully make a wise decision at the end of it. So we have a proposal to defer for reasons given, including further consideration and for a site visit to be given with suitable notice. So can we move to a vote on that? May I see all those in favour of deferring? Yeah.
That motion is tied, Chair. Can you therefore please indicate how you'd like to use your casting vote?
I think I've probably already made it clear that I think deferral would be of use in this thing, so I'll vote for deferral.
Vote in favour?
Yes.
Yeah. Can we just
physically? Oh, never done this before. There you go. I'd already voted, so it probably.
Okay. Well, if you voted in favour, then the motion to defer has been carried.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I thank everyone, particularly the members of the public who've given up their time to come in through a fairly torturous debate, and also thank members for what is a very and the members who said this is one of the most difficult decisions we faced. I completely agree with. So hopefully we've made some kind of wise decision at the end of it. We'll break for 5 to 10 minutes to allow people who wish to leave, and members like me to run to the toilet. Right. We live? Okay. I got to work out where we are now. Do we have a planning officer back? Yes. Right. As I say, thank you to everyone for that. That was hard going. And thank you. Apologies to people who've come for the other applications for bearing with us. So item 7, 2500886 FP, Reed House, Jackson's Lane, Reed, Royston, Hertfordshire. Anne McDonald to present. Anne.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. I have no update on this item to report, but I'd like to go straight to the slides, please. So can I have the first slide, please? I'll shout. Right, thank you. This is a full application for the. I might have to change glasses. I'm sorry. When I'm reading, I have to. Apologies. This is a full application for the erection of 14 dwellings on land rear of Reed House on the north side of the village of Reed. This map shows the application site hatched in orange. The site is on the south side of the joint where the vehicles will be from, and there's a pedestrian pathway proposed on the east side of Reed House to connect down to Jackson's Lane. On this map, the buildings in purple are listed buildings. Can we have the next slide, please? This shows the village of Reed taken from the local plan maps and shows the extent of the settlement boundary in green, with the conservation area being hatched in orange. The application site is on land outside of the village boundary and the pedestrian footpath is on land within the conservation area. Next slide, please. This is an aerial view of Reed where it can easily be seen how rural and loose-knit the development of Reed is. The open space within the village is a key characteristic of the village and of the wider conservation area. Next slide, please. This is a view of the joint with the gates on the left side to be the location of the proposed vehicle access point. The hedging boundary is to be retained and it is proposed to enhance this boundary with additional tree planting. The open countryside to the right can clearly be seen. Next slide, please. This is within the application site looking north towards the joint, so it's a bit small, sorry, and the gates boundary. Next slide, please. And this is within the application site looking south. Most of the trees around the boundary of the site are proposed to be retained. Next slide, please. This is the Jackson's Lane on the south side of the site. The existing vehicle access for Reed House is just behind the telegraph pole on the right-hand side, and the new pedestrian pathway will be roughly between the telegraph pole and the red letterbox. Next slide, please. This shows the proposed layout of the 14 dwellings. The proposed housing mix is 7 4-bedroomed, 2 3-bedroomed, 4 2-bedroomed and 1 1-bedroom property. The dwellings exceed the nationally described space standards, especially the 4-bedroom dwellings, which are very large, and the houses all have front and rear gardens and on-plot parking. The dwellings in plots 1 to 9 are all 2-storey 4-bedroom homes, and the dwellings in plots 10 to 14 are the proposed affordable dwellings and are bungalows, and 4 are 2-bedroom properties, with the detached bungalow in plot 12 in the top right-hand corner being a 1-bedroom property. This application is recommended for refusal on the basis that the proposed layout and density of development is considered to be out of context and harmful to this rural location, as it has an urban style form of development that is considered to be contrary to this location. The Conservation Officer has concluded that this development, by being erosive to the openness of the setting of the conservation area, would have harm to the wider setting of the conservation area. As a result of there being identified heritage harm, as advised by footnote 7 to paragraph 11D of the NPPF, the tilted balance, which obviously we discussed already tonight, is disengaged. This means that the application is assessed under the neutral balance. Whilst the benefit of 14 new homes is a planning benefit, this benefit is not considered to outweigh the harm the layout of this development would have in the locality. Next slide, please. This shows the footpath link where the footpath link would join Jackson's Lane, and there's no outright objection to this part of the proposal. Next slide, please. This is the proposed street scene plan, which shows the external designs of the dwellings. The application has been recommended for the 3 reasons as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do members have questions for the officers? Councillor Ruth Brown. Ruth.
Thank you. I just wondered if you could explain again why the tilted balance is disengaged, because I heard you say it, but I wasn't quite on the ball to get the whole reason.
You just want to hear it said again, don't you?
So in paragraph 11D, which obviously we talk about a lot, the government states that we have to give significant weight to the delivery of new homes unless the identified harms outweigh the benefit. And they specifically say that certain land uses are excluded from this area. So conservation area is one, areas of outstanding natural beauty is another, listed buildings is another. So the government basically says for upfront, these are very special landscapes or very special land use designations, and therefore they are excluded out of this consideration of what we call the tilted balance, where we have to give extra weight to the presumption in favour of development of new dwellings.
So just to come back on that, in this case, it's about the conservation area.
Yes.
Then. Right. Got it. Thank you.
Martin.
You've obviously visited the site. Of course you have. Councillor Brown and I regularly visit the site. I know the joint very, very well. I've spent many thousands of pounds repairing my car, having driven down the joint, and I actually just got it back from the garage last weekend. The joint is an awful road by any standard of measurement. My question to you is, how on earth can the Highways Authority not raise concerns about an access to a development of this size and scale onto a road like the joint?
I think it's possibly rhetorical, the question, but feel free to pick an answer out.
I can't really answer that, I'm afraid. So as you know, we have to take our advice from the Highways Authority, and they're recommending no objection subject to conditions.
Any further questions to the planning officer at this point? No. In which case, I would like to call off the public speaker. I have Parish Councillor Simon Aries. Councillor, you should have 5 minutes, and I'll let you know you have a minute left.
My name is Simon Aries and I'm the Chair of Reed Parish Council. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Parish Council to oppose this application and support the Planning Officer recommendation to refuse the application. The statement I'll read out was unanimously agreed by the Parish Council and reflects concerns voiced by residents who have attended parish meetings where this application has been discussed. This is the 5th attempt since 2004 to develop the site. Each time, including at appeal, the conclusion has been the same. The site is in the wrong place. It lies outside the local plan settlement boundary and faces away from the village. Minor adjustments and rebuttal statements advanced since November last year failed to overcome the fundamental problem of location or the issues highlighted by your officer's report. Site access is not from within the village, but from the joint, a narrow, de-restricted country road in very poor condition and without footpaths. As the officer notes, the scheme turns its back on the village, failing to integrate with the settlement to any meaningful degree. The local plan 2016 assessment of the site also determined that the access via the joint makes it poorly related to the village in social terms. This is exactly why the site has been excluded from the local plan boundary for Reed when it was finalised. That settlement boundary reflects Reed's distinctive historic settlement pattern, a distribution of built form set within an open landscape which is medieval in origin and is a heritage value protected by the Reed Conservation Area and by your own SP2 settlement boundary. The proposed development would disrupt that pattern, sitting apart as a disconnected adjunct of the village, contrary to the policies of the local plan. Reed has already had more than 10% housing growth since 2011, on allocated and infill sites, consistent with our status as a Category A village. An application for further 21 dwellings, including affordable homes, has been submitted for an allocated site in Reed, a site chosen through consultation and policy. We affirm this is how growth should happen: planned, proportionate and policy compliant. We recognise the 5-year housing supply shortfall and the pressures this creates for members and officers alike in this authority, along with many others. We acknowledge those pressures and we want to be seen as a parish council as allies of the planning system, not obstacles. But that district deficit cannot justify sidelining the local plan, accepting speculative development. That would undermine confidence in the plan-led framework. That is why we support the current local plan review process as a rational, fair and accountable way of updating site allocations to meet housing needs. Therefore, we oppose this opportunistic ad hoc development on sites outside of planned development process. This is why we also ask members to consider precedent, not as a technicality, but as a real material outcome of your decision. Breaching the settlement boundary and effectively negating policy SP2 will open the door to further speculative schemes around Reed. These would suburbanise open land along the joint and the Chiltern Ridge, degrading a landscape of acknowledged value. And the risk is not hypothetical. Last November, a local landowner and developer presented to Reed Parish Council outline plans for 30 to 40 houses on agricultural field next to the joint outside the SP2 settlement boundary, a forerunner of further opportunistic proposals that will follow any breach of the local plan boundary. Chair and members, it's your decision and we invite you to defend your local plan and affirm the principle of rational plan-led development. Reed Parish Council therefore urges you to accept the officer's recommendation and refuse the application.
Thank you very much, Councillor Aries. Are there any points of clarification from the member? No? Okay, thank you very much. We have the applicant's agent, Rosanna Metcalf. Sorry, you have 5 minutes. And I'll let...
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, who has lived in the village for over 33 years and is proposing to build 14 homes on land to the rear of his home. This site is previously developed land, and this was confirmed in legal advice from the applicant and shared with the council. As you will be aware, the NPPF requires decision makers to give substantial weight to the value of using suitable brownfield land within settlements for homes, proposals for which should be approved unless substantial harm would be caused. This previously developed site is located outside but adjacent to the settlement boundary, and the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, meaning that sites outside of settlement boundaries will need to come forward to meet the council's need. As a previously developed site outside of the Green Belt, which covers much of the district, land to the rear of Reed House is one such location. As noted in the committee report, this site has been considered before, with previous inspectors highlighting the site was not accessible by public transport. This is no longer the case, and it is worth noting that the application has been accompanied by a transport statement, despite the committee report stating otherwise. As shown in the submitted transport statement, most of the village amenities are accessible within a 10-minute walk of the site, including the primary school, which is located less than 50 meters from the site entrance. In undertaking the Call for Sites exercise recently, we found that the site is in 7.5 kilometres and a 30-minute bus journey of all the services identified by the councils, which included hospitals, railway stations, supermarkets and the like. The nearest bus stops to the site are Brickyard Lane and Blacksmith Lane, located 350 and 500 metres from the site respectively. This is the same and only bus service which serves Barkway, also a Category A village where 140 dwellings have recently been permitted. The village is also served by the 899 school bus, and the transport statement also shows the frequency of these stops, showing regular weekday and Saturday services. The County Council's Hearts Links demand service also serves the village 7 days a week. Unlike the other applications submitted, this proposal now includes a footway and cycle path connection onto Jackson's Lane. A new footway, which wasn't mentioned in the report, is also proposed to the primary school, ensuring that unlike the previous submissions, this site and indeed other properties along Jackson's Lane are connected to the centre of the village and its services. Again, unlike the previous submissions, the Highways Authority have not objected to the proposals on the grounds of sustainability or accessibility. Turning to the proposed reasons for refusal, it is notable that both reasons refer to the impact development would have on the character and appearance of surrounding area and the conservation area. It is worth noting that despite the council refusing the application twice on heritage grounds previously, previous inspectors have concluded there would be no harm caused to the heritage assets or the conservation area. The heritage consultant appointed to assess the proposals also advised that the site can be delivered without causing any harm to the significance of the conservation area. To confirm, the site is not within the conservation area and is visually isolated from it. Indeed, virtually the only point from within the conservation area where there is any appreciable visibility of the site is actually from Reed House itself. The site is very, very well screened and views of it are fleeting at best. The applicant has informed me that neither the Heritage Officer and the current members of the North Half Planning team have visited the site. If they had, they would see that the site is exceptionally well contained and the development of just 14 homes, incidentally the smallest of the sites promoted in the village, will not have a detrimental impact on the village or the surrounding landscape. It is worth noting that the previous suspectors for very similar schemes were satisfied that the proposal would not harm the character and appearance of the site or its landscape setting. The only reasons for refusal related to the lack of Section 106 and reliance on the private car, which we have now addressed. With the exception of the Heritage Officer, there are no technical objections to this proposal. The benefits of the proposal include much needed market and affordable housing, 5 bungalows, the provision of a new footway along Jackson's Lane, and support and investment in local facilities, including the village primary school and village hall. The applicant is willing to enter into a Section 106 agreement and has agreed to heads of terms which include, but are not limited to, contributions towards early years, primary school, secondary and SEND schools, and £6,000 for the kitchen refurbishment at Reed Village Hall and £3,000 towards a new notice board. In light of the above, we would urge members to visit the site and to see the clear benefits of this proposal for themselves and that they outweigh the harm to the conservation area. Planning permission, in our view, should be granted.
Thanks very much, Rosanna. Are there any points of clarification from members? Martin.
Can you tell me what the previous development on the site was?
There's been a few, as has been mentioned, and the one I was referring to, I believe, was for 12 dwellings.
I think on the same subject, I think you said it was a previously developed site. So what was the development on the site? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It's because it's a garden. So garden land is classed as previously developed land under the NPPF.
Councillor Bryan, Val.
Thank you. Could you clarify the percentage of affordable housing, please?
It's 35%, so 5 affordable dwellings, policy compliant.
Any further questions? Okay, in which case I will ask the planning officer to respond to any issues raised. Anne.
Happy. I don't wish to respond to anything. Thank you.
Do the committee have any further questions for the planning officer? Okay. Sorry. Councillor Winchester.
Thank you. I note from the plan that the affordable housing is segregated from the non-market housing by location within the site. Can I just get a clarification from the officers? Is that something that we're supposed to comment on at this point? Or, I mean, I just remember that I recall from recent training that affordable homes shouldn't be identifiable as such within a development and should be better integrated.
I think Sean and Anne are squabbling over who's going.
No, Sean, go for it.
Go on. Go on, Sean.
Yes, affordable homes should be tenure blind, although sometimes they're not because of the requirements of the affordable housing providers in terms of where parking should be and things like that. With schemes of this scale, you would expect the affordable housing to be in one place. For larger schemes, you'd expect it to be better dispersed. The affordable housing providers, for maintenance and management reasons, do like to have clumps of affordable housing rather than individual ones dotted around here and there.
Thanks, Sean. Councillor Tyson, I think you.
Yes, I was just scrolling through the planning portal to see if I could find a map, but I was in a little bit of a confusion now about whether this site is in the conservation area or partially so or not at all.
Anne.
So the main part of the back garden where the houses are located is not in the conservation area, but the pedestrian link is in the conservation area. So overall, the site is considered to be within the conservation area because it is partly within the conservation area.
Thank you.
Okay, if we have no further questions. No. So we'll move to the debate. The officer's recommendation is to refuse permission. Unless members are minded to propose a different recommendation on this item, I shall be proposing that we refuse permission. Martin.
Delighted to second.
I hadn't even got to that bit yet. It does it every time. Therefore, I propose that we refuse planning permission for the reasons set out in the report. Can I have a seconder, Councillor Prescott?
I'm very happy to second and reserve my right.
Thank you very much. So we're in debate. Councillor Ruth Brown. Ruth.
I will be supporting the recommendation to refuse for all the reasons that have been given. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I will also be supporting the recommendation. And I just also wanted to say at this point, because I've mentioned it in other applications, is that a development that is shielded and sort of looks like a little, I don't know, like this is in a garden, actually doesn't integrate into the community that well, really. So.
Val.
I'll be supporting recommendation based on what the officers have recommended. Thank you.
Do we have any further debate? Martin.
I was just going to say, obviously, I'll be supporting the recommendation. This feels wrong, this development, for all the reasons that the officer has given. I think it's a very well written and very well balanced report. And it clearly understands the stresses and strains of the local community and considers all the various planning considerations. So I'm very happy to support the recommendation.
Thank you. If we have no further debate, then we will move to the vote. Obviously, the recommendation is to refuse permission. Yes, to.
That motion is carried unanimously, Chair.
Okay, so comfortably within the cut-off, we move to item 8, our third application, which is application 250226O FP, Northway Filling Station, Great North Road, Hinksworth, Baldock. Councillor Tyson, I believe I get to throw you out. No, you've got to move to the public speaking gallery. I'll throw you out later. Okay, are we good to go? Okay, so as I say, it's 250260 Northwood Filling Station, Great North Road. Melissa Tyler to present. Melissa.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. Just a couple of updates. Just wanted to clarify, I'm still waiting on final response for the LFA on technical grounds. Also, following further concerns raised by the neighbours planning agent today, I've been in consultation with National Highways, and they are willing to propose to add an additional condition to mitigate any concerns over internal movements of vehicles. I'll just read that condition to you now. Apologise, it's a bit long. Within 12 months of the first implementation of the approved use, the operator shall undertake monitoring of vehicle movements within Northway Service Station forecourt and their interaction with the adjacent highway network, the A1. A GG 104 risk assessment report shall be submitted to and improved in writing by the local planning authority in consultation with National Highways at the end of the 12-month period, and any mitigation shall thereafter be implemented in accordance with an agreed timetable. The reason is to enable the operational impacts of the development on the strategic road network to be assessed and to ensure that the safe and effective operation of the A1 slip road is maintained in the interest of highway safety and network performance and in accordance with policy T1 of the North Herts local plan. And that's all my updates. If we could go to the presentation, please. Okay, so this is an aerial view taken from Google, and this shows the filling station in the context of its surroundings. Located on the southbound side of the A1 north of Baldock Services, the neighbouring property Northway House is located to the south of the site, and just for reference, Coty's restaurant is also situated just to the north. Next slide, please. So this is the site plan. As you can see from the site plan, the Greggs pod proposed is located on the northeast corner of the site with a shared entrance to the filling station, and a customer would continue towards the rear of the site to access the pod. 8 parking spaces and 2 disabled spaces and 2 EV charging spaces will be provided. Customers won't be able to enter the filling station once in the parking area of the pod. However, if you're going to the filling station first, they can then access the parking for the pod. This arrangement was amended during the application following comments from National Highways originally. Next slide, please. So this is floor plan and elevations of the pod. It's externally is substantially completed, as you will see from the photo shortly. Next plan, please. So sorry for it being tiny, but this is the elevation in a street scene. In the context of the filling station and neighbouring property. This also highlights the cat ditch and existing vegetation. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the first photo. This is of the Greggs pod. The proposed building has already been commenced on site and is substantially finished. It has a flat roof design constructed from timber cladding to the side elevations and grey coloured render to the front and rear. Next slide, please. This photo shows the pod towards the back of the site of the existing hard standing. None of the landscaping or parking arrangements have been completed on site. The application therefore considers the proposed addition of 11 parking spaces are to be provided, including 2 EV charging points. Next slide, please. The next 2 photos show the existing forecourt and the filling station. Next slide. And then next slide, please. Yeah, so this slide is taken as you come into the site, where you can just see the pod there in the corner. Next slide, please. So these photos are of taken from Google Maps, as it's difficult to take photos while you're on the A1. This shows the exit of the site and the access with the neighbour property. So that's the top photo, and then the entrance to the site is the bottom photo. The proposed proposal conflicts with policy CBG1 because the retail pod is not one of the permitted types of development in rural area beyond the greenbelt. However, the pod sits entirely within an existing A1 service station on previously developed land and causes no harm to rural character, landscape or openness. The scheme makes effective use of previously developed land and offers modest economic benefits, which carry positive weight. Following extensive consultation, there are no adverse impacts on highways, amenity, ecology or flooding, subject to LLFA making their final comments. Given the 2-year temporary permission, the lack of harm and material benefits outweigh the policy conflict in my view. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the planning officer? Caroline.
May I just ask for some clarification regarding the so if you just come off the A1 and go to the pod, then you would just come out the other side as normal. However, and then you can't get into the filling station. So if you wanted to do both things, you do the filling station first, but then how on earth do you get back? It's in the out bit that you have to get to the back. Yeah. Okay. So in that original photograph, that looks quite tight going around there. The slide one. Can we go back to the very first slide on this? Oh, sorry, not that one. The one that shows the aerial photographs of, not the aerial, the street view photos. Oh, okay, so that top photograph, right, you've got to swing round that way. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you. Can you just clarify what you said about, I think, what you called the GG 104 risk assessment? So it gets to operate for a year and then they do an assessment? I got confused.
The National Highways, this was supposed to come to committee in March. It got deferred because National Highways suddenly introduced maybe they need a risk assessment. They've gone away. The applicant and National Highways discussed it. So if this, I think their original comments were, if they have no issue of safety onto the A1, it's more internal assessment is just required if this pod was a permanent thing. So it'd require that. Having spoken to the representation for the neighbour today, I went back to National Highways and we kind of discussed having this risk assessment to be assessed while the pod is is live, kind of thing. Because of the 2-year permission, it's got a chance to be assessed, if that answers it.
So basically they want to see how it operates in practice and then see if it's all right.
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Billing. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask whether any consideration, I suppose, by the Highways Committee, Highways, to people that are going north wanting to use the pod because everybody loves Greggs.
I believe
whether they would cross or what they would do.
there is a Greggs on the northbound. I think a couple of services.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I can confirm that. Not that I've used it. Councillor Winchester, Claire.
Okay, going back to the sort of internal circulation within the site, it just seemed, and the risk assessment that would be ongoing, what would the outcome, so do people have to kind of have head-on collisions, or you have to have deaths for this to be turned down? Because I think, or do you have to, I mean, I can see without really effective signing and making conditions of really effective signing on the site that people will drive to the Greggs and then they'll get muddled and they'll go backwards down the wrong way and come back in the wrong end. And it just feels really risky to me. Can we put additional conditions around signage to make it really clear that if you want to park and you've got to do your billing first?
Sean.
Thank you. The risk assessment is one that they'll undertake whilst it's operating. And National Highways have indicated that they don't have an issue with the slip roads going in and out. They don't have an issue with regard to that. What they do want to see is how it actually functions within the site. And if, as a result of the risk assessment, they feel that the layout doesn't function so well, there will be two options. One would be to change the layout so it functions better. And if they felt that a different layout wouldn't make it function better, that would weigh against us renewing a further temporary permission at the end of the 2-year period. Okay, so it's an opportunity for them to see how it actually works internally. If National Highways felt that there was going to be a highway safety issue with regards to the slip road off and on to the A1, they would have recommended refusal.
But it is definitely the internal circulation within the space.
Sorry,
Sorry, it wasn't the slip roads I was concerned about. It was the
Right.
internal circulation between
Yes,
the Greggs
and
and the.
that's right, and that's what National Highways are particularly, well, they're not concerned about it. They just want a risk assessment to be undertaken to ascertain whether a better layout could be achieved if there is an issue with regards to that layout, and if a better layout can't be achieved, then would we renew planning permission if it was felt that those risks that have been identified can't be addressed by some kind of mitigating changes to the layout?
The layout was amended during the application from the original comments made by National Highways, so it's already been commented on.
Councillor Prescott, Martin.
I note condition 3 stipulates the opening hours that are permitted for the Greggs pod. How does that compare with the opening hours of the petrol station itself? Is it 24 hour? Okay, thank you.
Okay, in which case I would like to call first public objector is Hayley Doyle. Hayley, you have 3 minutes and I'll let you know when you have.
Sorry, just before I start, we weren't aware of that additional information before tonight. So of the additional condition, Melissa didn't pass that on to me. So I'll say what I'm talking about, but there might be some further discussion that might be needed to happen afterwards, if that's okay. Okay. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Hayley Doyle. I'm a Chartered Planning and Development Surveyor. I was asked to review this planning application on behalf of the adjoining landowner, who raised concerns in relation to a number of issues which relate to this proposal. In light of this information, which has been reviewed, I'm here today to urgently request that you defer this application for an official site visit for the following reasons. The proposal introduces a new Greggs Cafe and hot food takeaway directly off the A1. The existing exit slip road is already entirely unsuitable for the existing arrangement. There is a dangerous conflict with a neighbouring residential access. This application intensifies this use of this junction by creating an additional use at the site, leading to more traffic, which will use the existing slip road. National Highways had agreed with us that the arrangement was not suitable and did request a safety audit for this junction after they visited the site in March, yet they appear to have now withdrawn this request. That may have now changed. They're asking for a safety audit to be produced when a permanent application is submitted in 2 years' time. But what if a serious accident occurs within that time period? It does not matter if planning permission lasts for 2 years or 20 years. The risk to human life is established the moment the building comes into operation. Because National Highways have stepped back, we ask that the impact on the safety is considered in a practical manner by this committee and the local planning authority. Under paragraph 115 of the NPPF, it is your responsibility to judge the highway impacts and whether they are unacceptable or severe. We also need to consider whether this is in fact a temporary structure which can be dealt with under a temporary permission. We are aware that substantial foundations have been put in place and an underground septic tank and services installed. Are we sure that this proposal can be dealt with as a temporary permission, or is this just a way of securing planning permission without carrying out the necessary safety audits or the necessary improvements to the site access to make this development acceptable? Furthermore, there is an outstanding objection from the local lead flood authority. The site lies within a known flood risk zone. The officer suggests dealing with this after committee approval. But you cannot safely decide on this application without the full environmental facts in front of you. Yet another reason to seek deferral. It is just difficult to judge the true scale of the highway's risks from a desktop screen in this chamber. You need to stand at the exact exit point, look at the physical geometry, and witness the current exit arrangements of this site firsthand. We ask you to exercise your vital duty of care. Vote to defer this item tonight until a site visit is conducted and all the critical information is fully assessed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any points of clarification from the committee for Hayley? Martin.
Your point about the dangerous, the sort of the proximity of the exit back onto the A1 and the entrance and exit to the neighbouring property. I note, and I don't know how accurate this is or if it's still current, but I'm looking at Google Earth at the moment, and there's a huge, what looks like a tree or an enormous shrub between those two exit routes. Could safety not be dramatically improved by just simply taking out that tree or shrub or whatever it is?
Sorry, I think that tree's actually gone.
Oh.
If you're able to bring up the slide, you'll see the conflict of the where the screen, where Google Street View's shown from the A1. You'll see the conflict. So for the owner of the property to get into their property, they have to cut across the exit slip road of the. Oh,
it's not coming out. It's going.
Do you see what on the top one there? So to legally go into their property, they have to go across the exit slip road into their property. So they are directly conflicting with the exiting traffic coming out of the service station. Now we know that obviously National Highways are the lead consultant on this, but the last application that was put in on this site was for a redevelopment proposal. They asked for a safety audit and they asked for improvements to that that exit slip road. This time, because it's come under a temporary consent, I guess we feel that potentially are they just going under the radar slightly to get something agreed? But the risk is still there. There is an intensification of use, and I think we feel that that risk needs to be assessed properly through a proper risk assessment and safety audit. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. I did actually visit it today. Just to confirm, the Greggs Pod is at the back of the existing footprint. It's nowhere different than the existing filling station, and the exit from the entrance and the exit from it are the existing entrances for the filling station. So is it right that there is no increased hazard from having Greggs there than the existing petrol station, apart from presumably more I was going to say footfall, whatever.
Yeah, so normally within the highways report you ask for a trips generation as to what the additional traffic would be in relation to the proposal. The applicant has done that. They've done their own transport statement, and there has been seen to be an increase in the amount of traffic, because obviously people, as you rightly point out, quite like Greg's. So therefore there will be additional traffic that will be going in and out of that site, which is not it's not a dual use. You're not just going to
No.
that there will be additional traffic, and they
Just
have
to
acknowledged that.
clarify, the entrance and the exit from the A1 into the filling station area and Greg's, and the exit will be the existing one.
Yes.
Because I'm conscious that obviously the thing that probably weighs highest on us is there isn't an objection from National Highways, and presumably there is an argument that if they thought that exit was dangerous, they would have taken action.
I believe, and I'm not a highways consultant, but I believe that if the trips that are generated through the pod are not to a certain number, additional traffic, it goes under their radar as to it being classed as an intensification of use. I'm quite happy to be corrected on that. Our point is there will be an intensification of use, and therefore we believe that there needs to be considered that risk will be increased.
I'm sorry to labour this point. When I first asked the question, I assumed it was concern at coming out of the neighbouring property, but you've explained that it's actually going into the neighbouring property. So would the solution not be, if you're going into the neighbouring property, to just turn off, go through the petrol station forecourt and turn into it that way? I mean, that's certainly what I would do.
Yeah, there's actually legally they don't have the right to do that.
But the petrol station's public space, isn't it?
Well, David might be able to clarify that from a property consultant perspective afterwards.
The site owner.
Wait until can we defer that question to David after he's done his talk, because that's more not planning related.
Councillor Mantle.
Do you know how often there are movements in and out of the property which gets its access off the exit slip?
Sorry, so you're asking how many times they go in and out of their property every day?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many members of the public live in that property, but yeah, potentially David, who answer that one next time.
Well, I'm allowed to.
Not yet.
Don't have an answer. We'll perhaps re-ask the next speaker and see if they have it. Is that okay, Ian?
Yeah, so it's just that it is only one property.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, do we have any further points of clarification from this speaker? No? In which case, if I could ask our second public speaker, who's David Clifton. David, you've got 3 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have a minute left.
Thank you. My name is David Clifton. I'm a chartered surveyor, and I've been engaged by Mr. and Mrs. Ruggieri to act for them over their concerns regarding the safety of their house, access and exit, which is located on the slip road from the Welcome Break station going south. In my opinion, the approach on planning has been incorrect in that Welcome Break has considered it appropriate to proceed with construction and then asked for planning permission retrospectively, which puts unnecessary pressure on the planning system by a reputable company. It is difficult to consider the intention for this building is temporary. It seems the substantial foundations and deep excavation for a septic tank indicates this to be long-term. The application is therefore incorrectly requested. It is also unclear if appropriate building regulation approval has been signed off or obtained. Contact has been had with Highways, who have made it clear that the opening to a private house driveway onto a slip road in such circumstances would not now be permitted. In my opinion, the application for planning will increase activity on the site, despite what Welcome Break claim. This application should be sufficient to request a reset and to allow a new slip road design to take account of safety. It is understood that Highways have required a safety report, but it appears from planning agenda this report can be implemented after the permission is granted. Clearly there's been a change from what Melissa has identified. Given the conduct of Welcome Break, putting up buildings without planning, carrying out infrastructure work possibly without building regulation approval, suggests that they may not hurry to carry out a safety report or indeed bother with it. It's therefore imperative, in my view, that the safety report should be conducted before planning is granted in view of the serious nature of the situation and the potential risks. Surely it's only right that a large company such as Welcome Break should want to conduct all necessary process in a correct fashion. It's understood that Welcome Break are prepared to look at alternative solutions for the access from Mr. and Mrs. Ruggieri's house. The deferment of this application would allow such alternatives to be considered. Can I please request that this application is not determined until all the safety issues are resolved? Also, for the committee to make a site visit. Inspection on site will show the risks to the house owner and how potentially dangerous it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Do members have any points of clarification for David? I know Councillor Manta wanted the question.
The information is not available there. It's not available.
Were you able to answer the previous question about movements in and out of the neighbouring property?
Yes, it's a large detached dwelling, so it's only one dwelling, but they have several cars, and I consider that any movement out of the site is at risk, and therefore the numbers are probably less significant. It only takes one car, one accident. It is an accident waiting to happen. If you look at a large articulated lorry pulling out of the petrol station, getting ready to pull out, anyone wanting to go into that house is compromised, and there is a serious risk.
Prescott and then Councillor Winstanley.
I mean, with all due respect to the applicant and the local resident, it's not the resident that's actually making this application. Why should the number of vehicle movements in and out of their property be a consideration at all at this point in time? The fact of the matter is it's been described as dangerous, so I think maybe it would be wise to carry out a safety audit on it.
Right. Councillor Peace, Louise.
Can you just respond to the question that was asked earlier about why residents in the house can't go through the filling station to get to their property via a sort of slightly safer route?
The owner of the petrol station site has made it quite clear that he has no right to do that and has objected to it. So although he could, as a member of the public, clearly there is confrontation between the site owner and him. So, he'd rather not do it.
Okay. Any further questions? Thank you, David. In which case, I will call Councillor Tom Tyson as member advocate. Tom, you've got 5 minutes. And I'll let you know you
thanks, Chair. I hope I won't need 5 minutes. I mean, I think pretty much everything that needs to be said has been said. So I'll try and summarise from my perspective that clearly this objection is all about the safety of traffic movements, both in and out of the site on that slip road and within the site itself. So the problem with the slip road, okay, you may argue that, well, it's only one house and, they've been muddling along so far without any accidents taking place. So none of this will change significantly, but we do anticipate that there will be an intensification of use on this site. Whatever the applicant says, they wouldn't be doing this unless they expected to make some extra custom from it. So we do need to have security about how many traffic movements come out of that site or into it and out of it currently as a baseline for measuring against in the future. And of course, with the conflict with the driveway of the house next door, Northway House, it's not just the residents coming and going that we've got to think about, it's all the deliveries. Those people won't know their way around necessarily, and it's a very, as you will know if you've tried to go into their drive, that it's a very difficult situation as a motorist to do that, and it's quite uncomfortable. On the site itself, if you cast your minds back to that second slide, I don't know if we're allowed to see it again, but as was pointed out, if you want to fill your car and then use the Greg's pod facility, you have to drive out of, as if you were going to exit the site, parallel to the A1, and then take a left turn alongside the shop, which puts you in a contraflow situation with all the traffic coming out of the parking spaces. I don't know. I hope you can imagine what this is without seeing the slide again, but there will be traffic coming from the parking spaces at the top end of the site towards the A1 on their way out. You will be going on the same road up towards the parking spaces, and then there will be HGVs emerging from your left from the diesel fuel pumps, which they will use. So that's the confrontational situation that highways have expressed a concern about. It is a bit of an ant's nest in there with all the different vehicles coming and going in different directions, and that's going to be quite a challenge as well as getting back out onto the A1. And of course, the more people that use that, the more difficult it will get. And so it is fundamental that the safety audit is carried out as soon as possible, I think. If this does come about, I prefer that it didn't, obviously. So those were the two real concerns about the highways, and I don't think we should dismiss either of those lightly. And if you've got a chance to look at the Google Maps, you can see what a difficult site this one is, and compare it to their other site opposite on the northbound carriageway, where you can clearly see a logical, clear, safe one-way system for all vehicles to use the facilities on the other side of the road. This Northway filling station does not lend itself to a safe use for this, and I don't know what the reason for it being a temporary application is. We can only speculate on that, or wait for the applicant to explain that. But I think it's not something that we should be approving at this stage. Thank you.
Could I just clarify something, Tom? Did you say mention people who've gone to Greggs who then want to go to the petrol station, or vice versa?
You can't go from the Greggs to the petrol station.
But you can go from the petrol station.
You can go from the petrol station. You have to take a left turn round, so that it takes you around the back of the shop. In fact, if you try and do that, you'll discover that you can't get your car around the curb. You'll have to go into the oncoming lane to get around that bend because it's very tight. And then bearing in mind, obviously, there'll be HGVs emerging from their filling side of the station from your left, and cars coming from the parking spaces ahead of you at the pod. And you will have to cross both of those traffic paths, including the cars that are coming into the pod parking without going into the filling station.
Councillor Mantle, Ian.
Councillor Tyson, you said that you would want the application deferred until after a safety audit. I'm a bit puzzled as to what the safety audit will be auditing.
I don't recall saying that I wanted the application deferred until then. I said that the safety, if it were approved, the safety audit must be conducted as soon as possible, because without knowing what the result of the safety audit is, we can't tell if it's safe or not.
But you can't have a safety audit until it's actually operating, so you then audit what's happened when it's actually working. Is that a correct understanding of what you're saying?
I said if it were to be approved, that there should be a safety audit conducted as soon as possible after the operation starts. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Bryant. Well.
Thank you. I'm going to try and put a question at the end of this. I've just been looking on AI, because I thought we've been looking at these as two separate entities, the house and the petrol station. I thought, what came first? Just bear with me. I realise it's not quite clarification. And in the 1930s, the Northway Garage and adjacent house were constructed together. 1940s, the A1 section there was upgraded to a dual carriageway. 1970s to 80s, then the road layout changed and it became a little chef. And then it's in more recent years, the forecourt underwent modern developments and so on. And what I'm getting at is it that in fact by bringing this application or having to have this application, that we find that we've actually hit upon the fact that we've got a development there where there hasn't actually been a safety audit. There has been changes, and maybe we need time to actually defer to actually find out what the history of the safety audits are and to have a site visit. And I'm going to think of a question to ask you now, Tom, so it's actually in the right place. Did you know this?
I wasn't aware of all that history. Thank you for informing me.
Yeah. Do we have further questions to the member advocate? No? Then we will move on to the applicant's agent, Ross Fraser. Ross, you have 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have 1 minute left.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Ross Fraser. I'm a planning consultant acting on behalf of the applicant. I'd like to thank the committee on behalf of Welcome Break for the opportunity to address you today in relation to the full planning application proposing the temporary erection of a Greggs Pod unit at land east of Northway Services in Hinksworth. The application site comprises a long-standing roadside facility serving passing traffic travelling northbound on the A1. It's a roadside infrastructure that is dated in nature, and the facilities for its users have not kept up with modern expectations. The Department for Transport Circular 01/2022 recognises that, quote, roadside facilities perform an important safety function by providing opportunities for the travelling public to stop and take a break during their journey. Further, the circular acknowledges that, quote, service areas must support the uptake of zero-emission and hybrid vehicles through the installation of EV charge points at their sites. The proposals are temporary in nature, with consent sought for a 2-year period. They comprise the retrospective introduction of a pod unit, comprising just 66 square metres, and wider improvements including the introduction of 2 EV charging points for which there is a shortfall on the A1. In the interest of clarity, the site does not provide EV charging at present. The officer's report details that the application is supported by relevant consultees, culminating in a recommendation for approval. It acknowledges that the proposal comprises sustainable development, and the planning permission should be granted subject to the recommended conditions. The proposed development will result in a series of benefits to users of the site, including a betterment in facilities and economic benefits by way of the creation of 5 jobs. The site is brownfield in nature. It does not provide any benefit to both users of the highway nor the applicant. The proposals therefore comprise a positive use of the land. National Highways, the relevant technical authority on such matters, accept that the proposed development will not result in an intensification of use. They have provided 4 rounds of comments and have recommended the approval of the temporary planning permission. The local highways authority also don't object to the proposal. In respect of amenity, the existing roadside facility operates on a 24-hour basis. Notwithstanding, it has been suggested by the applicant that the proposed development operates on reduced hours compared to the petrol station. The officer's report acknowledges that the Greggs Pod is further away from the neighbouring residential property to the south than the existing PFS, and states this proposal would not give rise to any materially adverse harm upon the reasonable living conditions and well-being of occupiers of neighbouring dwellings. The design of the Greggs Pod is modern in nature and reflective of such facilities. The officer's report acknowledges that passing views will be limited to vehicles on the A1, and the unit assimilates well with its immediate context. The proposal will deliver further benefits through the provision of 2 EV charging spaces. At present, the facility does not benefit from any charging points. The chargers will be high-powered in nature and comprise a significant betterment to the facilities at the site. Further, a rationalisation of parking is proposed, which will aid the efficiency of the site. Beyond matters discussed, relevant consultees have provided positive representations in respect of flooding and ecology. As members will be aware, Section 38 of the Town and Country Planning Act requires decisions to be made in accordance with the development plan unless other material considerations dictate. The proposed development is temporary in nature and small in scale. It will provide a betterment for users of the site by way of additional food and beverage facilities. Further, it will introduce EV charging for which there is a need. The applicant has worked together with officers, resulting in the positive recommendation. National Highways have recommended approval, and the Local Highways Authority have not objected. The unit will operate on reduced hours compared to the existing facility. It will result in economic benefits by way of job creation. Visual impact will be low and limited to passing vehicles on the A1. It is therefore respectively requested that members approve the application before you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any points of clarification from the member advocate? Martin.
Just a quick question. There's no reason why your client can't introduce EV chargers without the Greggs pod, presumably. You can do it now. You could do it tomorrow.
You could do it now, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That's, yeah.
I just wondered if there was a reason why the developer doesn't allow the neighbouring property to use the forecourt to drive to his house.
Me personally haven't been party to those discussions, so I'm unable to provide an answer to that.
And on that point, I'd remind the committee that we don't actually know the facts of the matter and probably shouldn't take that into account. Louise, please.
Councillor Tyson was talking about vehicles possibly having to mount curbs or go into oncoming traffic going around corners. They've talked about doing a safety audit once things are up and running, but surely it would be quite a simple matter just to model how traffic performs with the layout you've suggested. Has any modelling been done to see how traffic would behave?
I believe that the swept path analysis will have been undertaken. I think it's important to stress that National Highways are recommending for approval, and as well as your Highways Authority. So I think that work has been done in the transport assessment.
Okay, do we have any further points of clarification? No? Then can I invite the officer to respond to any of the issues raised?
Wanted to just clarify, any safety audit would be for the internal circulation of vehicles, not the slipway exit or entrance. So it's just the internal circulation of vehicles and not anything else. No.
Okay. So the officer's recommendation is to grant planning permission. Martin, I believe you may have had a further question.
Would it not be possible to carry out the council's own modelling of movements on the site before the thing? I mean, I'm looking at Google Earth now, presumably where you got your images from, but you can actually walk right into the site. You can see the side road that Councillor Tyson was talking about, and interestingly, you can also see the size of some of the trucks that have been parked at the rear. And I've got to say, that looks extremely tight to me. And I'm just wondering why we have to wait, or why we have to give permission and then wait for somebody else to carry out an audit. It strikes me that this is something that had been done fairly easily.
We don't have any highways experts at the district council. We rely upon the advice of highway experts. In this case, it's National Highways, and they've indicated that they've raised no objection to a temporary consent, but have recently suggested that we do that a safety audit is undertaken to ascertain how it will work. In the first year, and any changes necessary to improve the way that it works could be undertaken as a result of the safety audit. If at the end of the day there are some serious safety issues, it's a 2-year temporary permission, and you don't renew the consent after 2 years, and that I think is the fail-safe with regards to this matter. The fact that it's a 2-year temporary consent that the applicants are seeking.
Can I ask the officer? We're just trying to work. Did you add a third? Because there's two conditions on the thing with A and B. Did you add a third one around the safety audit at the start?
Drafted today.
Okay.
Did you want to see it? Did you want to see it written?
Well, we'll need to add it. Presumably, when I read this out, we would need to add it, because I was going to propose one myself. But if it's
a bit in bold.
Okay, so this is an additional condition.
Yes.
Okay. Within 12 months of the first implementation of the approved use, the operator shall undertake monitoring of vehicle movements within the Northway service station forecourt and their interaction with the adjacent highway network A1. A GG 104 risk assessment report shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority in consultation with National Highways at the end of the 12-month period, and any mitigation shall therefore be implemented in accordance with the agreed timetable. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that preempts anything I was going to suggest. So are we clear on that? That's the third condition. Okay. Any other points at this stage? Sorry, Louise, you're on.
Next, yep. So on the basis of that, who would enforce that condition? And presumably we couldn't impose any other condition, such as doing the safety audit now, because a relevant agency, the Highways England, it wouldn't be proportionate because Highways England have said we wouldn't be able to do that. But back to the original question, who would enforce that condition?
We would. Yeah.
Yeah, the enforcement of any conditions that we impose is for us to enforce. We would normally do it in consultation with the statutory consultee, which in this instance is National Highways. We wouldn't do anything unilaterally. We'd consult them, and if they said there was an issue, we would be the authority doing the enforcement, not National Highways.
Okay.
If a safety audit is completed within 12 months and the report submitted, and if that report indicates that there have been some serious safety concerns, but we then let it run for another year, is that putting the council at risk should a serious or fatal accident happen between the report being submitted and the end of our agreed permission? And with that in mind, should something come up after 12 months, do we have the right to curtail permission sooner than the 2 years?
Sean?
We do have enforcement powers at our disposal that can be used. My view is it's highly unlikely that would come up with such serious safety issues. Having said that, if that was the case, then we do have various enforcement powers at our disposal. Notwithstanding that, as I say, the backstop is that we would only be granting a temporary 2-year permission in any event.
Okay. Councillor Brown.
Just thinking about the neighbour, is it possible to impose a condition that the landowner, in this case, allow them to access their drive via the station and their visitors and their delivery vehicles?
I don't know. Go on.
No, we would not be able to impose such a condition. That basically gives a third party right to access another party's land. In this instance, we are talking about a petrol filling station, and vehicles are going in and out there all the time. But I'm assuming that there's some kind of dispute between the two parties in this instance.
Okay. The officer's recommendation is to grant planning permission. Sorry. We need to get Councillor Scott. I'm quite right. Well spotted. Go on, get out.
I was feeling under a lot.
Yeah, I know. Thanks, Tom. Cheers, Robbie. I missed that one.
About
Yeah,
at the end of the
mitigation.
12-month period, any mitigation shall thereby implemented in accordance with agreed timetable with national. So if there was any risk assessment risk found, then the report should include mitigation and therefore implemented.
Okay, I will reread out the condition when we get to the thing. Okay, Tom is out of the room. I shall carry on. The officer's recommendation is to grant planning permission. Unless members are minded to propose a different recommendation on this item, along with the material planning reasons, I shall be proposing we grant permission. Therefore, I propose that we grant planning permission subject to A, the resolution of the LLFA matters to the satisfaction of local planning authority with the imposition of planning conditions or amendments. With the imposition of planning conditions or amendment of planning conditions as necessary, with any actions required pursuant to the LLFA response being devolved to the Development and Conservation Manager, and B, the conditions and informatives as set out in the report. And C, within 12 months of the first implementation of the approved use, the operator shall undertake monitoring of vehicle movements within the Northway Service Station forecourt and their interaction with the adjacent highways network, A1. A GG 104 risk assessment report should be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority in consultation with National Highways at the end of the 12-month period, and any mitigation shall therefore be implemented in accordance with an agreed timetable. May I have a seconder for that? I think Councillor Winstanley got there first.
Yeah, happy to second.
Thank you. We have a seconder. So we are in debate. I may actually, rather than go last, go first on this. I just want to check we don't drift too far from, this is an existing footprint where there is a petrol station on, and what I'm slightly worried about is, you know, the entrance to it and the exit are what are used for the petrol station at the moment. And what if we spent a lot of time discussing what may be issues, they would also largely be issues for the petrol station as well at the moment. Which leads me to my second point. If we were minded to reject this, that we have a recommendation. National Highways are not recommending that we reject this. So in terms of material considerations, I think we'd have to think very clearly on that. With that, I shall shut up and leave you to your debate. Martin.
You think I'm going to cause trouble, don't you? I saw you looking at me. I'm not. I'm perfectly happy with the application because I think the conditions satisfy the safety issues, and I think I'm very happy to support it as with the additional conditions that you just read out.
Likewise, I'm happy to support it with those conditions. I think there is potentially a conflict within the site of people going out of the filling station and round the back to go to Greggs and then meeting a lorry. However, I think it's unlikely there will be a serious accident because people will be travelling at very low speeds. So it's possible people might have some bumps. Hopefully there won't be any pedestrians walking around there. And well, hopefully they will make sure that doesn't happen. I think good signage and indication is helpful as well. I hear what Councillor Tyson says about the hitting the curb and it's a difficult bend to go round, and there wouldn't be much visibility, I think, coming round there to the back. But I'm satisfied that, you know, with an audit and the conditions that to actually support it. Thank you.
Councillor Winchester, Claire.
Thank you. I think, Councillor Brown, I think pedestrians are exactly the problem. As really, I mean, we've talked a lot about that left turn against, round the back of a corner into oncoming traffic. But I think what normally happens is that we drive in as a family and park up and start filling up, and teenagers pour out the back of the car and pelt over the Greggs without looking left and right properly and go and grab a sausage roll. I have never used this site and would never use it. It looks dangerous to me as it is. So I get, if highways think it's fine, that's fine. But I can't help but look at the plan and look at the very well designed, slightly larger footprint on the other side of the road, and wish that the applicant had done something a little bit more dramatic, maybe, and remodeled this properly to make proper, real proper access and safety a consideration.
Could I ask Melissa? I'm looking again on Google, and there's a opposite where the building is, where the petrol station, that very kind of narrow side road. It does appear that there's a big chunk of land that belongs to the petrol station. Do they have any kind of plans to widen that little access area? Because that, I think, would probably go a long way to solving the problem.
Is that relevant to this application?
I mean, it's not, but I'm just saying if that was an issue.
Sorry, I'm confused where you're talking about.
So I'm on Google Earth. I've gone into the petrol station, and I'm now down the side driveway, which is the road, which is proposed to be a two-way road.
Yeah, so the exit.
There's a big chunk of land on the other side, which is heavily overgrown at the moment. But it looks as though there's a boundary fence, a good 12 feet the other side of that. And if the owner of the property, the owner of the petrol station, was minded to, and if there was an issue of safety, they could literally slice that straight back. I mean, it's not relevant to this application. I get that.
I mean, it's within the red line, but there's substantial vegetation there, probably screening the neighbour from the petrol station. So I'm not sure the neighbour would want them all cut back.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Okay. Okay, I think we're done on debate, are we? Then if we move to that, we have a recommendation to grant the plan permission with the 3 conditions. If I can see those in favour or against.
That motion is carried, Chair.
Alert amongst you may have noticed we passed the 10:30 guillotine. So unless somebody tells me differently, I think the remaining business falls and we defer to the following meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can, I was going to say, you can either defer the item to the next meeting or you proceed if you want to. So it's up to you to act.
I think we want.
What do you want? Information, I suppose.
I'll do this on a show of hands. Do we want to crack on and get this out of the way, or? Yeah. Okay, I'll give it. Let's do it. Come and check and Val. Right. Okay. Sorry, it's wording. Yes, we're continuing past. Okay.
It's just not too.
Yeah.
See that.
Okay. As outlined under 4.8.24G of the Council's Constitution, this meeting has reached the cut-off point of 10:30 p.m. However, I believe that we can continue with the remaining item on the agenda, and therefore we will proceed. That's great. Thank you, Robbie. Okay, so we would have had item 26-00403 S73 Beaton Road, Hitchin, but that has been deferred to the next meeting of the Planning Control Committee on the 18th of June, which brings to item 10, appeals. Sean Reeves. Sean.
Thank you, Chair. it's a I'll keep this very brief. We've had 3 appeal decisions. Members may recall one of them was a decision of the committee, and that was dismissed. And we've had 7 appeals lodged, all written representations. So that's the end of my report, unless you've got any questions. Martin.
Just curious when we can expect a response of the Barkway Road one.
Normally the target is 6 weeks from the end of the public inquiry.
So I've got another 3 or 4 weeks to
Yes.
go. Right, thank you.
Okay. That was for information only. No vote is required. I therefore close the meeting, and the next meeting is on Thursday, the 18th of June, 2026, which Martin won't be at, so that'll be half the time. And to Councillor Winchester, welcome to planning. I'd like to say it's not always like that, but I'd be lying. But anyway, you're most welcome.